Hey everyone, how's it going? Solomon Christ here, and welcome to the second level of the AI Foundations course. In this program, you're going to be learning all of the basics of AI and automation, and specifically in this one, we're going to be diving deep into n8n. So let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right in. So welcome to the Foundations of AI and Automation, Level 2. All right, we're going to be working hard in setting up n8n. We're going to be doing a lot of different things inside of this entire program. And it's going to require you to spend some time and actually do some work. This course is designed to empower you with the skills of a proficient automation engineer. That's right. We want to make you into an automation professional, all right, when it comes to using AI and these new technologies. And that too, without having to go through an entire degree program. And there is going to be a lot of degree programs out there and a lot of stuff. But the hope is that, in this program here, you'll at least get your hands onto the basics and walk away with this with, the confidence that you need to actually take on automation projects on your own. The focus of this course is to build a structured program for n8n so that at least at the end of the day, when you're diving into this, you actually have a step-by-step way to do these things. You're going to be learning the basics of n8n and AI automation. Then we're going to be actually diving into actually building out a spreadsheet system where you're going to see how we actually take data from a spreadsheet and then after that process it and go back and forth using AI. And then afterwards diving deep into the n8n actual courses where you can actually earn badges as well. So now before we get started, some of the things that you're going to require is number one, you're going to need to have a Google email. So if you don't have that, I recommend go and get one. This entire course is based on using the Google services because they're free. Next, you're going to need an OpenAI key. To do that, you actually have to go to OpenAI and set this up. I'm going to walk you through those steps, but you're going to have to pay something, and it's usually like $5 or $10. Now, if you're lucky, you might get some additional free credit, so that might help you out, but you do need to have that because that's the only way we're going to be able to use the AI from ChatGPT and OpenAI. And next, we're going to be setting up a DigitalOcean account. Now, if you don't have an account, I recommend going down below and just clicking on the link. It is an affiliate link, so I do get something from it. At the same time, though, it gives you up to $200 worth of credit with DigitalOcean. So not a bad deal. You get some money to use DigitalOcean, and I get some affiliate fees as well in the form of credits, so then I can use more DigitalOcean as well. So everyone kind of wins there. But the idea here is that you've got that set up because we're going to be creating a server for n8n. In this program, you're also going to be learning how to effectively integrate AI tools like OpenAI into your automation workflows, mastering the Splat framework for creating automations and thinking like an automator. And you're also going to be gaining proficiency with essential nodes for controlling logic and handling data, as well as, completing the official n8n courses to earn verifiable badges and demonstrate proficiency. So this is a comprehensive course. It really is. There's a lot that's inside of here, and it's going to take you several hours just to even go through, not even, talking about actually doing this yourself. I mean, it's going to take you time to think through this, to actually do the exercises and do the work. So I recommend you take, your time to do this, and maybe you take a weekend to actually just go through this and actually set this up. It is so important that you do the work because, listen, as much as I see so many people just copying and pasting automations or they found something online and then they don't know how to use it, it hurts me because it's like, I know that you could do this because I did it too. I was in your exact position, at the beginning, and it was just like, I need to do this. And so the same thing, you can do this as well. You have to dive in, you got to do the work, and you're only going to get out of it what you put into it. Now, we're going to be starting off by setting up n8n, and there are, 3 different methods that we're actually going to show in this program on how to actually set n8n up. We're going to go over setting up n8n on the cloud, right? So their system, so n8n cloud. We're going to be going over setting up a VPS or virtual private server using DigitalOcean. We're also going to be going over, local setup, and that's on your actual computer itself. And so that's going to be the 3 main ways that you're going to be setting up n8n. And you could choose each method for a different use case. There's so many different reasons on why you want to set these things up. The easiest and fastest method, though, if you just want to get right in, is going for n8n Cloud, and that's their own system. And you just create an account and you're up and running. Next, we're going to be diving into the fundamentals of n8n. That's navigating the interface, understanding core components, creating automation workflows and actually doing that because that's a big part of it, and how to set up your credentials because without the credentials, well, a lot of these apps just won't work. After that, we're going to dive into the thought process behind actually creating workflows, and we're going to be going over a framework that I, came up with called Splat. And it's just a way to kind of think through the entire process of creating automations. Then we're going to dive into some of the more important points of n8n where you do really need to know this, and that is JSON and JavaScript. They will give you additional powers to, really get the most out of n8n. Then we dive into sub-workflows and modularity, as well as design patterns and tips for that. Now, I'm coming from a software background, so for me, finding systems and methods has always been the key, and you're going to see that inside of this course as well. One of the key projects that we're going to dive into in this course is a spreadsheet data processor. It's a practical application focusing on concepts and real-world problem solving. Listen, I'm sure you've seen a lot of the, YouTube videos out there that are all about looking cool and making all kinds of fancy stuff with n8n, and absolutely you could do that. But when it comes to actually working with clients and, really getting your hands ready for n8n and the stuff that you're going to do, it's a lot of data processing. That's what AI's superpower is taking a lot of data and then being able to use that data to do something. And finally, we're going to dive into actually getting community badges. That's right. You're going to be going over the level 1 and level 2 official n8n courses. And we're going to try and get you guys the badges. And we're going to get you to, join the communities and actually take part inside of there. In this course here, we're not here to give you all the answers. You really need to do the work. And so you're going to see that I'm going to be changing around some of the data and information because honestly, you still need to do the work. And I think it's going to be more of a disservice if I showed you all of the exact answers that you're going to go put in and then everyone just gets a badge. So what's going to happen here is that I'm going to show you similar projects or similar items. So when we actually talk about, some of the problems that they show inside of the official level 1 course or the level 2 courses, I'm going to show you kind of like how that works. But I'm going to be using different data and different information so that even if you try to go and put those inside of the form, it just won't work. The goal here is that you understand the concepts. Yes, you're going to see pretty much the same flow, but the information is going to be changed so that, you go out there and you do this yourself on your own n8n and you get those badges officially. But the nice thing is you can actually kind of think through it and understand how some of these problems work and how we can actually solve them. So the n8n ecosystem, it's got a lot of resources right now to support you and more coming along the way. Now, this course emphasizes the importance of engaging with the vibrant global community of n8n. There is so many people behind the movement of n8n and it's constantly growing. So I'm going to guide you through a tour of essential resources that will help you as you start your journey in n8n and automation. The first link that you want to get is n8n.io. This is the main n8n website, and this is where you can come to get, all the latest updates and information about n8n and what's going on. But it's really important to have this bookmarked, all right? Because this is the starting place, and this is where everything that you're going to need is going to be here. So definitely have this bookmarked. This is the main n8n website. Now, over here on the n8n website, you're going to see this here called Community, and that's exactly where you want to go next. The community forums. So you could either click on the community and forum link here, or you could type in community.n8n.io and you'll go to the same place. Now, if it's your first time on the community website, I highly recommend you sign up. And in fact, for this course, you're going to need to do that. So first, go ahead and you can actually click on this cookies toolbar here, and you want to click on the sign up button here. After that, enter your email, your username, and information. This is what you're going to use to identify yourself in the entire community. As you can see, mine is Solomon Christ. And I've got a lot of different badges and, all kinds of different power-ups. So it's really nice, and they gamify the whole entire experience. The next area is the Discord server. So if you've never heard of Discord, Discord is a chat application that is generally used in the gaming industry, but now it has become a really big, area that a lot of, software companies and developers and a lot of people who like to engage will usually go to. And, it's either this or Slack. So if you've heard of Slack before and you've used that or any chat application, Discord is one of them. And it's one of the biggest ones nowadays. So go ahead and click on Discord here, and it's going to take you to the Discord webpage. And here we are in the n8n Discord server. That's right. The n8n Discord has a lot of different channels here, and a lot of the community comes here, and they all like to discuss everything when it comes to n8n, AI, and automations. And you even have some of the n8n team there as well. In fact, all of the n8n team is on Discord. And so you can actually, talk to people and get the help that you need. All right. So it's really important that you have access to the n8n Discord, because we're going to need it as we come back to, doing our courses to get our badges. The next area is the community documentation. So if you click on docs and you click on documentation, all right, or you could actually go to docs.n8n.io. Definitely want to bookmark this as well. There you go. All right, because this is going to be so important, because you're going to be going to this all the time as you're actually doing automations, and you're going to be learning different things along the way, and you're going to say, how do I use that node, or how do I do that thing? And usually it's going to be inside of the n8n documents, that you're going to find a lot of your answers. And finally, we're going to be going to the integration site here. So inside of n8n's main website, you're going to go down to integrations, and that is going to be your list of every node that they currently support. All right, so this is huge. And to have this entire list and be able to kind of see what's available, this is going to be very helpful. So if you're not sure about a node, or you're like, hey, you know what, does n8n support this? Well, this is a great place. So I could just type in, for example, let's say Google, items or Google Sheets, and it's going to show you all the Google integrated nodes that they have available. So engaging with this, community and ecosystem, it transforms you from a user to a contributor. And that allows you to, stay updated with the latest news and information, but also get involved, inside of the n8n overall community. So now we're at the point of actually setting up n8n and multiple different options. So we're going to start off with n8n Cloud, and we're going to go over the step-by-step procedures to actually set that up and create an account. So the n8n Cloud is the fastest way to get started with n8n. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to first go to the n8n website, then we're going to create an account, and then within moments, it should be ready to use. So let's actually go ahead and do that, and I'm going to take you through it step by step. All right, so here we are on n8n.io, and I'm going to basically click on Getting Started up here. And now we're going to actually type in our name and information. So I'm going to type in my name here. So there we go. And so that's what I'm going to have there. And you want to keep up with constant improvements through our newsletter. So yeah, I'd recommend joining the newsletter. It's going to help you to kind of go over everything there. And you get to start a 14-day free trial. So go ahead, click on that. Okay, and it's going to ask you the size of your company. Chances are you're just starting out, so it's probably only me. What team are you on? Well, I could be any of these here. I'll just put that I am the owner. Sure. What best describes your company? I am an automation agency. Sure. There we go. And which of these do you feel comfortable doing? Writing JavaScript, using SQL, configuring API, using regex, setting up a webhook. I could do all of these things. Cool. All right. Here we go. How did you hear about this? It was from Solomon Christ. There we go. Solomon Christ. There you go. Go ahead. Type it in. That'll be great. They'll be like, oh my goodness, Solomon's doing all kinds of stuff. There we go. All right, hit OK. And who are you creating this account for? For me personally. There we go. Hit submit. All right. So now I can invite team members to my workspace if I want to. For now, I'm just going to skip this here. There we go. All right, and there's Max, and he is known as the original flowgrammer. All right, he's really great, and he's actually a big part of the n8n community, and he's part of the n8n team. But let's go ahead and click on Start Automating there, and as you can see, we're ready to go. That's it. That's all it takes to get up and running in n8n via the cloud. It is the fastest method to get up and running. Okay. So now for our second way of getting up and running, we're going to be using DigitalOcean. Now, DigitalOcean is known as a VPS, or a virtual private server system. All right. And it's a common choice for a lot of people to actually get up and running using what we call Docker. And so there are certain images that are online. This is like a fancy term if you've never heard of it. But basically, the idea here is that, you're going to have your own server that you could control. Now, it is a little bit more of an intermediate sort of, setup. So I'm going to walk you through that. If you don't know what's going on, I would recommend just going back to the simple version and just setting up on n8n Cloud, and you'll be up and running. But if you want to actually take the time to actually go and set up a DigitalOcean account and go through the steps, I'm going to walk you through that right now. Click on the link below because that one actually has an actual $200 coupon. It's an affiliate link, so I also get a little bit of DigitalOcean credits as well. And so at the end of the day, it's going to help both of us out. But hey, you get a $200 credit, and many of these servers are just starting off at $6 US a month. So that could actually save you a lot of money, and yeah, pretty much make it nearly free to use for a little bit. So the steps that we want to follow are, first we're going to sign up at DigitalOcean.com. Then we're going to create a droplet using something called Ubuntu. And that's a type of Linux, and we're going to set it up. From there, we're going to be accessing our server either via their console or SSH. And then finally, we're going to follow the installation steps. Now, it does require that you have a domain name, because we're going to actually create a subdomain under that domain name, which will be for your n8n system. All right, so let's dive right into that. Now, if it's your first time using DigitalOcean, if you go to the link that I sent you, you're going to get the $200 credit. I'll show you that in a bit. But right now, if you're not even using that, this is what you'll see first. So you want to click on sign up to actually sign up for an account. It's probably going to ask you for a credit card. As I said earlier, this is a requirement if you're setting up the virtual private server edition. Now, if you use the link, which I actually put in the bottom there, what's going to happen is you're going to get this actual sign up here, which shows you a $200 credit. All right, so you get that there. You actually get a nice little bonus. So you'd sign up, you get a $200 credit and 60-day credit to try the products. Spend $25 after your credit expires, and whoever referred you will also get $25 in credit. So that's how it works. All right, so I actually get $25 in credit if you actually spend any more afterwards. And so it's kind of like this nice little bonus. But regardless, the point is at the end of the day, you get a $200 credit to try this stuff out. And that's the goal here, is that, it saves you a little bit of money. All right. So up to you, whichever way you want to go. But the point is you want to sign up for DigitalOcean. So once you get into DigitalOcean, you're going to see this setup here. What you want to do is you want to go to the green create button here, and then you want to click on droplets. All right. So from there, what's going to happen is you're going to choose a server location that's close to you or close enough to you. All right. So I'm down in, let's say, Los Angeles area. San Francisco is the closest. So it's kind of like, you want to actually find a place that server is going to be able to, give you the fastest speed. Now, if I chose someplace like, let's say, Singapore or, Sydney, Australia, well, then that might actually be a lot longer for my actual server to respond. And you also want to think about where your clients and customers are. Now, in this case here, if you're just learning, well, then keep it close to you. But if you're actually building for a client, well, think about where they are, and that's where you want to actually set up that server. All right, so I've chosen the San Francisco server. And now I want to actually go into my marketplace here. And this is where I'm going to be typing in n8n. So n8n, and you're going to see this here. Just click on that. And there we go. That's the image. It's on Ubuntu 22.04 LTS. And now this is where we can actually set up the server. If you want the most basic server, it's $6 a month. And it's got 1 gig of RAM, 25 gig hard drive, and 1 terabyte of transfer. For your learning, that is more than enough. But if you're actually working with customers, you may actually want to go up to something which has more memory, like a premium Intel or a premium AMD, and you might be looking at a 2 gig of RAM. And so in that case there, I'd actually opt for either this one here for $12 a month, or I'd go up to about $14 to $16 a month for the premium Intel or premium AMD, because that RAM is going to help you, especially if you do localized AI, where you're setting up, Olama, for example, and you want that to actually run on the actual, n8n server. All right. But for now, we're going to start off with a $6 server to get everything up and running. All right. So now you're going to choose a password. This is going to be for your root user. Okay. So I'm just going to use something here. All right. And then you want to put in your host name here. I'm just going to put in n8n training. And then my tags here, this is n8n. And then over here for the tags, I just put in n8n. You can put anything you want. And at the bottom right here, when you're ready to go, you're going to click on Create Droplet. Now, this process does take some time, so give it about 5-10 minutes as the server actually, gets loaded up. And once it's done, go ahead and click on that new server that you created, and you should see this page here. So now at this point, you need an actual domain name, and we actually needed to actually have a subdomain which points to this IP address. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And now we're going to go into our main domain name. All right. So in this case here, you're going to go into the DNS section of your domain. Now, if you're using GoDaddy, you're going to find that DNS section as well. I'm using DreamHost. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be adding something called an A record. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click on add a record. And then from here in the host name, I'm going to type in what this is. So for me, this is n8n training, all right, .solomonchrist.com. And it points to, well, now you're going to paste the IP address. So let's go back into our DigitalOcean, copy that, and then come over here and paste that in. And so now I've got the IP address here. And now all I have to do is click on add record. And it's going to take about 10-15 minutes to propagate. So give it that time to actually do that. And we'll be able to go on to the next step after that. All right. So once that's done, we're going to go into our console here. So I can click on console at this point, just like that. And it'll actually open up a console view here. And that brings us to this actual point here where now I'm in my n8n server. So I'm going to go ahead and it's going to ask me these questions here. So the subdomain that I had just set up was n8n training. So n8n training is what I'm going to put inside of here. And then you're going to type in your main domain name. In my case, it is solomonchrist.com, just like that. And now it's going to ask me for an email address. So I'm going to put that in, solomon@solomonchrist.com. There we go. And now it's asking me if I'd like to configure a time zone. So I'm going to hit yes for time zone. And I'm going to change this to Americas by hitting the number 2. Then I'm going to type in 49 for United States. Then I'm going to type in 21 for Pacific. And then afterwards, I'm going to hit 1, which is yes. And there we go. So now it's actually going to be pulling in several different items, specifically Caddy, which is going to be used to actually, help run the n8n system. It's also downloading n8n. Now, if you actually watch some of my other tutorials, I actually go even deeper on how this entire system is working using something called Docker. And as you can see, the Docker composed YAML file. All right, so we dive in deep and we actually, add in additional things like FFmpeg and so on and so forth. All right, so once that's done, it's actually going to show you the URL here that you can actually go to set up the next steps. All right, so this is the next part of the setup. So go ahead and copy that. And now when you paste this in the browser window, this is what you're going to see. So now it's time for us to set this up so that you have your own virtual private server. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type in Solomon@solomonchrist.com. First name is Solomon, last name Christ. Password. So put in a password that you're going to remember. All right. And yeah, sure, you could put in I want to receive security and product updates. Hit next. All right. Now, another item is it's going to show you this next series of steps. I highly recommend you follow them through because you're going to get a special license key. All right, so watch this. So what best describes your company? So similar questions from what we had on the cloud version there. Which industries does your company, work in? I'm just going to put IT for now. That's fine. Which role best describes you? I am the owner. Who will your automations mainly be for? Myself. How big is your company? If you're just starting out, it's just yourself. So less than 20 people. How did you hear about n8n? And you're going to put other, and you're going to type in Solomon Christ. Solomon Christ. There we go. The n8n team could see all of that. There you go. All right, get started. Okay. So now get paid features for free forever. So this is what I was talking about. All right. So you want to actually make sure you put your email in because you're going to get a special license key. All right. So there we go. We're going to get a free license key and I'm going to click on that and I should see that key come in. Now, as you can see, we've got the same n8n version that's here. Now we're going to be diving into the interface in just a bit. So first, let's continue going back and actually do the actual setups so you understand all the different ways that you can actually set up n8n. All right. And so inside of your email, you should get this license key next. And so you're just going to copy that. And then you're going to go back into your n8n. And on the bottom left there, you're going to see these 3 dots next to your name. You're going to click on settings. And then you're going to click on enter activation key. So go ahead and paste that in just like that. There you go. Click on activate. And there you go. So now you actually have a licensed edition, community edition for, your n8n. And there you go. You're now fully set up on your own VPS server with n8n. All right. So that now brings us to the local installation. So the local installation will allow you to actually set up n8n locally on your own computer. So there's a lot of benefits to actually having a local system. First is access to your own local files. All right, so you don't have to worry about exposing them to some online service or it going through the internet. You can actually have it, locally done. It gives you greater control over the execution environment, and you can run a lot of powerful workflows right from your own system. So to do this, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using something called the self-hosted AI starter kit. And you can actually find this on n8n's own GitHub. And we're going to follow these steps, step at a time. We're going to download, we're going to extract, we're going to configure, and we're going to run. And we're going to set up n8n on our own local system. So the first thing is we got to go to, github.com/n8n-io. And that's going to take us right to the main n8n GitHub page. From here, when we go down, you're going to see the self-hosted AI starter kit. And so along with n8n, you're going to be getting several things, including Ollama, Quadrant, and of course, some SQL there. What we're going to first do is we're going to be cloning this repo. So the assumption is that you have Git on your system. Now, if you don't, you're going to be actually going to, Google and just type in git install, and you're going to find this first one here for Git. You click on downloads, and it'll allow you to install Git on your system. So once we do that, we want to go onto our actual system and create a folder for n8n that we're going to be using. So in this case here, because I'm teaching you guys, I'm just going to use a temporary folder. But you guys can use any folder that you want, as long as you can navigate to it using your command line. So I'm in my C drive here. I'm going to right click here and I'm going to go to new folder and I'm going to type in local_n8n. All right. So that kind of gives me an idea of where it is. And so that's what I'm going to access. And now I'm going to do a git clone to this. All right. So now based on this repo, I'm going over the steps for an NVIDIA GPU because that's what I have. Chances are, which GPU you have. All right, so, focus on that one there. If you're using an AMD GPU, then use these steps here. So I'm going to do a run command. So that's CMD. I'm going into my actual console view here. All right, and let's just cd ... into the main area, cd space ... again. So there we go. I'm now in the main. I'm going to type in cd local n8n. That's where it was. So I'm going to hit enter. So I'm going to git clone this entire thing. So first thing that we want to do is just copy that first, command there, which is the git clone command. It's the same in all three steps here in any case. So let's go ahead. I'll just grab it from here because I'm using the NVIDIA version here. So I'm going to copy that. Let's go back to our command line. There we go. Paste that in, hit enter. So now it's actually cloning the entire repo there onto my computer. So now I have to actually do cd self-hosted AI starter kit. So I'm going to just do that. And now it's asking me to copy an environment file. So I'm going to just do cp, all right, .env, .example, and then space .env. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit enter. All right. Now CP is not recognized. All right. So we're going to try copy instead. And so now inside of DOS or, DOS command lines, this will work. If you're not using, the command prompt and you're using bash, that's another way to do this as well. And you're going to get that, which is git bash. So git bash, there it is. All right. So I can now do everything the exact same way I just did there. So it would have been the exact same set of commands, but now I can use the CP commands and so on. All right. So now from here, I'm going to type in Docker compose. Now this is going to fail because I don't have Docker. All right. So watch this. So I'm going to type in Docker. And if I hit enter, you see that it says Docker is not recognized. All right, so as I said, I don't have Docker yet. So we have to go to docker.com and get Docker Desktop. So go ahead, and literally go to docker.com and we're going to download Docker Desktop for your version of Windows. So you're going to choose one that works for you. And once it's done, go ahead and install Docker Desktop. And as you can see, it's doing the entire install. So give it some time. And once it's done, let's come right back and we'll continue. All right. So as you could see, one of the things that is being installed when we set up the Docker, desktop itself on Windows is something called the Windows subsystem for Linux. All right. Basically, we're putting Linux onto our system so that we can actually set up Docker and start using it. So this is specifically for Windows users. If you're using a Mac, it's already got Linux as its, underlying system. So it's a lot easier to go through the Mac system, compared to Windows PC. but we're doing it on Windows so that you could actually, understand how to do this, because guess what? A lot of the business owners that you're going to be working with, chances are they have Windows. All right. So this is going to be very important as you're setting this up. So what's going to happen is when you set up your Docker, you're going to go through the steps. It's going to send you, sign up, email information and all that. You're going to have to restart your computer several times. So that's just kind of how it works. But once you get to this part here, you're going to be able to move on to the next steps. So now coming back to the next steps, we need to do a Docker compose for our specific actual graphics card. So in this case here, I'm using NVIDIA. If you're using an AMD GPU or a graphics card system with AMD, then you want to use this version of Docker. Okay, I'm on an actual NVIDIA system, so I'm going to be using this specific version of Docker when it comes to the command. And now I'm going to type in the actual Docker compose command here. All right, so in this case here, it is Docker compose -- profile GPU NVIDIA up. All right. So usually on our other systems, we would do a Docker compose up, but in our actual local system, we have to do a Docker compose profile GPU NVIDIA up. So it's basically just that extra set of commands here. Go ahead, hit enter, and now it's actually downloading everything. So specifically, the Docker YAML file has additional items such as Olama, Quadrant, and several others on top of the n8n. So let's go ahead and give that some time, and it's going to now set everything up for us. All right, so when everything is done, you should be able to copy and paste this link here. So this is on localhost with port 5678. So I just copied that into a web browser, and as you can see here, localhost with port number 5678, it comes right to this exact same screen. And now I've got n8n, the actual system, running on my local system. There we go. So now I have n8n set up locally on my system. All right. So that is now the third way, and it is a more advanced way, but now I have it locally. All right. So now that brings us to our very first quiz. Okay. So question number 1, what are some helpful n8n resources? Is it the n8n website, n8n documentation, n8n Discord, community forums, and node listing site? Or is it the local newspaper? If you said the n8n website, n8n documentation, n8n Discord, community forums, and node listing site, then you're right. What are 3 ways to install n8n? Is it using spreadsheets, APIs, and digital sound system, or cloud, VPS, and local? If you said cloud, VPS, and local, you're right. What is the fastest way to get started with n8n? Is it n8n Cloud, or is it VPS server via DigitalOcean? If you said n8n Cloud, you're right. If you wanted to set up n8n locally, what would you do? Download the Windows EXE, or download the n8n starter kit from github.com/n8n-io. If you said download the n8n starter kit, you're right. Congratulations, good job. All right, so now we're on to the n8n interface overview. The n8n interface is your control panel for building, managing, and monitoring all of the n8n automations. It's important that you understand these core components because they're essential for creating powerful workflows. In n8n, the left panel is your primary navigation hub. You can access your n8n installation details and system-wide settings. So here it is. This is the left side here. And as you can see, we've got overview, we have personal, and we've got other things as well, including if you click on these 3 dots, you can actually go to your settings panel. A very important part in the settings area is the version code. This is going to let you know what version of n8n you're running. A lot of times you're going to be probably in these 2 tabs here, either the overview or the personal. Now, the overview has a lot of additional data, including some statistics that are going to help you along the way. Now, the workflow section allows you to manage and easily access all of your automations. So you're going to have a lot of different automations over time, and they're all going to show up right here. So this is where you're going to come, is this workflows tab. Each workflow in n8n is a series of connected nodes. The next tab is the Credentials tab. This is where we're going to be able to connect a lot of different credentials for different services, such as Google Drive, OpenAI, and of course many other services that are available via nodes. And finally, the Executions tab shows you all the different executions that have happened already. So every time you run a workflow, that counts as one execution. Now in the workflow section, there's a search box here, and that's really important because over time, you're going to have a lot of workflows and you're going to be searching through all of that. Now, when you're ready to create a workflow, you're going to click on this plus icon here on the left, or you're going to click on Create Workflow here at the top right. Both of them will do the same thing. So let's go ahead and click on Create Workflow. And now, as you can see, we are in the main editor window. This is where all of the magic happens. A workflow is a series of nodes, and n8n comes with a lot of them. At any given time, if I want to find out, what nodes are available to me, at the top right over here, there's this plus button. If I click on that, I get a list of every single node available in n8n, and I can actually type in what I'm looking for. So for example, if I'm looking for Google Drive, well, I can actually type in Google and I get a list of all the different Google nodes available to me, including Google Drive. Now, a quick way to access that actual list of nodes is by hitting the Tab key on the keyboard, and I can actually access that very easily. And it's a fast way of getting right to your nodes. Now, you'll notice at the top of the editor window, there's the Execution tab again, but that's specific to this specific workflow. And it's important to know that because the Execution tab in the main sidebar has all executions for your entire n8n implementation versus a specific workflow, which is what this is here at this point. Now, the workflow canvas is where you actually connect up nodes. And so I can add a simple node here, and I'll just do a manual trigger. And as you can see, every node comes with different forms of messages around it and something that you can visually see. So for example, every node generally has some basic visual information. Usually a node will have some form of plus button that shows you that you can attach things to it. In this case here, this is a trigger node, and we could tell that by the nice little lightning icon on the left side. At the bottom of every node is a naming convention for this specific node. In this case here, this is an execute workflow node, and we actually know that because it says execute workflow. And for most nodes, they're usually going to have a little square or gray square here on the left that shows us that it can be connected to by another node. In this case here, this is a Google Drive download file node. And at this specific point, we've got a problem with this node indicated by this little red icon. Now, every time a node has any trouble, you're going to see this pop up. And so all you have to do is double click on this node, and it's going to show you what you could do as next steps. Now, above every node, if I hover my mouse over any node, you're going to see three specific icons. The first one here allows you to execute this actual node. And so we'll see that as a play button. The second icon allows you to deactivate this inside of the entire list. So if I click on that, it's no longer going to be called, but it's really helpful if I want to actually, keep this node inside of my entire hierarchy. And this is important when you're actually creating really big workflows and you may not want to go to a certain point there just because you're trying to test things out. It's really good to actually do that. Now I can also click on this node and I can hit the letter D on my keyboard, and I can also activate and deactivate this node. The next item is the delete icon, and that will allow me to remove this node from the actual workflow. And for additional items, I can actually click on the three dots and I'll see a list of additional actions that I could take for this node. At the top right, you're going to see a save button. You want to save consistently. You can also alternatively hit the Control S button, and there you go. You could save your actual workflow. At the top left here, when you double click on my workflow, you can actually change the name of this workflow. So I'm going to call this test workflow. Just like that, hit enter, and now I've saved it. You can also add tags to your workflow as well. At the top right here, a very important feature is the inactive and active workflow state. So when you're using things in production, you want to change this from inactive to active. And there's going to be times where certain flows will only work in an active state. So it's important to know where that button is. Now at the top right, there's three dots here. This will actually show you a list of additional commands, specifically downloading your entire workflow as a JSON object. You can also import entire workflows using the import from URL or importing from file. In the settings button, I can see additional commands here that I can use on this specific workflow. So now let's dive into setting up our very first workflow. Creating a workflow is a very straightforward process. So first we're going to start off with a trigger node. That's going to start the entire workflow. From there, we're going to add an action node by clicking the plus icon, and we're going to set up an action node, which is going to be known as a set command, which will actually allow us to manipulate the data. And finally, we're going to be able to execute the entire workflow by clicking on the execute workflow button. Now, as you're about to see when we actually dive into actually setting up nodes, every node window has several key elements. The left side is usually the input, or where is the data coming from. The middle is usually the settings. And the third area, the right area, is the output. And we're going to see this in action in just a bit. So here we are now. And as you could see, if I double click on this icon here, I actually have my settings and my output. So when I click anywhere outside of this set of windows, it'll actually exit out, or I can click on the back to canvas icon here, and it'll also take me back to the main canvas. So let's go ahead and add a set node. So go ahead, let's click on the plus button here, and let's type in set, and this is called edit fields or set. And now I can actually click here, and I can actually create something called output, and I could say hello n8n world. There we go. And now if I exit out of this by clicking anywhere outside of these windows, and as you can see, input on the left side, settings in the middle, output on the right side. So I'll exit out of this window, and if I click on the execute workflow command, as you can see, it ran my workflow, and if I double click here, my output says hello n8n world. So this is the general view of most nodes, with an input on the left, a settings area in the middle, and an output on the right. Many times you're going to be manipulating nodes exactly in the same format. Now, as you saw, some nodes have just the settings and an output, and usually those are trigger nodes. Now, to connect your workflows to external applications like Google Sheets, OpenAI, or others, you have to first provide n8n with the necessary permissions. This is handled securely through the credentials section. Now, the reason why we use the credentials section is, number one, of course, it stores our credentials in one place. We can then reuse the same credentials across all kinds of workflows, and we can avoid having to repeatedly enter all this sensitive information like usernames, passwords, or API tokens and keys. Now, one of the tips that you can use along the way is having a consistent naming convention inside of your actual credentials. That's going to help you out, especially as you get into so many different credentials for so many different apps that you're going to be using along the way. So for right now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be setting up two specific types of credentials. We're going to be setting up credentials for OpenAI, and we're going to be setting up the Google credentials. We're going to need these in a future step. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to navigate to the credentials section. We're going to add a new credential, and then we're going to follow along as we set up the credentials for Google and for OpenAI. All right, so here we are now. I'm going to click on credentials, and let's start off with Google first. So we're going to assume that you already have a Gmail account. So first, let's click on Add First Credentials by clicking on the Credentials section here. And we're going to look for Google. And we're going to start off with Google Drive. So Google Drive OAuth 2 API. So go ahead and click on that and click on Continue. Now over here, you're going to see this window. Now the same window also pops up from Workflows. I'll show you that when we actually go into the OpenAI API setup. So for Google, we have to go a few steps beyond because we're going to need their documentation to understand how to get the client ID and the client secret. So for some nodes, you're going to have to do this, and it requires that specific services information. So let's go ahead here and click on Open Docs. Now over here, you're going to see a lot of information. What we want to do is we want to click on the Google Cloud account. From here, you're going to see this Google window. Now you're going to see up here, start for free or console. Let's go ahead and click on console here. And now it's going to ask us to set this up. Okay. If this is your first time doing this, we're going to follow along. So you're going to choose a country that, your account is from, and you can agree to the terms of service and just agree and continue. Now at this point, you're going to see this. And if you want to get the, $300 in credits, go right ahead. But what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be selecting a project. Then you're going to click on New Project. So now I'm going to give this a project name. I'm going to call this my n8n project. And then I'm going to hit on Create. Perfect. So now that it's created, we want to select that project. So click on Select a Project again. This time you want to select the n8n project that you just created. So now you are in the n8n project section in Google Cloud. Now at the top left, there's this 3 little lines icon. Click on that. And let's go down to APIs and Services. And specifically, we want to go down to Credentials. Now, once you get to this page here, we want to click on Create Credentials. Specifically, we want to create the OAuth client ID. So go ahead and click on that, and we're going to see this. Now, you're going to notice that it's going to ask us to configure the consent screen. So let's go ahead and click on Configure Consent Screen now, and then click on Get Started, and then choose an app name. So in this case here, it's n8n project, and then a support email. In this case here, I'm just using my Gmail account. I'm going to hit Next, and we want to click on External, okay? We're going to be adding our email as a test user. So go ahead, hit Next. Finally, we're going to put in the contact information, and there it is. That's my Gmail. Hit Next. And then make sure that you agree to things, hit Continue, and click on Create. Perfect. So now that this is created, we're going to go back and we're going to go to Audience. And specifically, we need to add a test user. And in this case here, we're going to be adding in the various emails and test users that we want to have. Now, once you've added your test users, these are the ones that are going to be able to have access to this specific key. So now we're going to go back again to the 3 lines, go to API Services, go to Credentials, and now we're going to click on Create Credentials, OAuth Client ID. Now you should see this screen. Go ahead and click on Web Application. From here, we're going to type in n8n key. And now we need to type in our authorized redirect URIs. Specifically, click on Add URI. And now let's go back into our n8n, and you're going to copy this URI here. This is the URL. So click to copy that, and go ahead and paste that in to your authorized redirects, and then click on Create. And you will get your client ID and client secret. So go ahead and copy these 2 and paste them into your n8n. All right, so after I enter that information, I'm going to click on the little Sign In with Google button. Now, once you select the account and make sure it's one of the same emails that you put in as the users, you're going to click on Continue here. You're going to give it all the permissions and hit Continue again, and you should see connection successful. After this, the credentials have been added. There's still one more step in Google. So inside of Google, we want to be able to access additional services. So to do that, we need to type in the various services that we want to access up here. For example, I want to access Drive. So then I type in Drive, and you'll see Google Drive API. I'll click on that. I have to click on Enable. Then again, Gmail. So I'll type in Gmail, and now I've got the Gmail API. Click on Enable. Next, for our training, we definitely need Sheets. So Google Sheets, you're going to type in Sheets. There it is, the Google Sheets API. Click on Enable. And many times you're going to be using the other Google services. So let's go ahead and let's do Docs. So Google Docs API. And let's do Slides as well. So Slides. And there we go. Using the same credential, I can now access Google Slides, Google Sheets, Google Docs, and even Gmail, all in my n8n. So now we're going to add the additional credentials at this point. So let's go ahead and hit the plus button at the top left, click on Credential, and now we're going to choose our next items. So let's type in Sheets. There it is, Google Sheets, OAuth 2. Click on Continue. And now we're going to use the exact same client ID and secret. We don't have to do that again with the other items. Just use the exact same client ID and client secret. So I can go back to my credentials here. I can click on this key. I can recopy my client ID and my client secret and put that back in. And now all I have to do is sign in with Google again, hit Continue, select all the items, hit Continue again, and there we go, connection successful. So now I have my Google Sheets account ready to go as well. And now it's your turn. Go ahead and add the other services, such as Google Docs, Gmail, and even Google Slides. All right, so when you're done, you should have all of your accounts set up just like this. Now we're going to move on to the OpenAI account. For OpenAI, we're going to do this in a different way, and I'm going to show you how you can actually do credentials through the actual workflow system itself. So let's go ahead and let's start off with the workflow. So as you can see, I've got nothing here. I'm just going to put in a basic chat trigger. So I'm going to click on the plus button. I'm going to type in chat, and there's a chat trigger. Now I'm going to hit tab, and I'm going to type in AI agent. So there it is, AI agent. And you're going to see this little, node here. And I know it looks, really funky. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Not to worry. Specifically, what we're going to do is I'm going to exit out of this by hitting back to canvas. And I'm going to be clicking on this little plus icon next to the chat model, just like that. And now when I come down here, I'll remove my video so you can see this. I'm going to see the OpenAI chat model. So I'm going to click on that. And now I have to actually add a credential. So the reason why I'm doing it like this is so that you could see that we can add credentials as well right within nodes. So in this case here, I'm going to be adding a credential for OpenAI. So I'm going to click on the drop down and I'm going to click on create new credential. Now you're going to notice that I need an API key. So this is a little bit easier, but still I have to go into the documentation for whatever service I'm going to be using. In this case here with OpenAI, I have to actually go into the OpenAI docs. Now I'm going to click on Open Docs here. And inside of n8n, we've got the documentation on how to set this up, but specifically, we need to create an OpenAI account. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on this here, and you're going to see that it's going to ask you to create an OpenAI account. So let's go ahead and I'm going to continue with Google, but you could do it in any way you want. So I'm going to create my OpenAI account, and then you're going to put in, I'll invite my team later. And here's our key. So I'm just going to do a test key, just generate the API key. This is what we're going to need. So here we go. When you get your API key, you're going to copy it and you're going to come back here and paste it inside of here. Once you do that, you're going to hit save. If everything went well, your connection would be tested successfully. Now, when this screen shows up, you can click on I'll buy credits later. Usually people will spend about $5 and they'll get some credits. Now, another way to get your API key is if you're already inside of here, you want to go up to the top right of the platform.openai.com and you're going to see the settings button. Click on that, and in the left side, you're going to see API keys as well. And that's another area that you can get it from. Now, at the beginning, when you create a new account, you're going to have a free trial, so you'll be able to kind of like test it out. They usually give you credit grants every now and again. In this case, I don't have any. But usually, we spend about $5 to $10 just to get everything up and running. Now, it's really important that we set the limits here. So I like to set limits by clicking on the limits on the left, and then clicking on Select Models. And then when it comes to allow, I usually will use ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo. It's one of the cheapest and fastest models around. So I can actually hit Control F and find GPT 3.5 Turbo. And I like to go to the one specifically that is just GPT 3.5 Turbo. By doing that, I protect myself because many times keys get stolen and then they end up using all kinds of crazy models. And some of the models are very expensive to use. So GPT 3.5 Turbo is usually, a lot cheaper in the long run. All right. And so when I go back into my, n8n, when I click on the drop down here, I should only see the actual model that I chose. And now I'm able to connect to OpenAI. So to test this out, what we're going to do is we're going to take our little, chat message box here, and I can click and drag with my left mouse to connect it to the actual AI agent. Now, inside of this agent, it's basically saying that the source for the prompt is going to be coming from my previous node. For this example, this is completely fine. So basically, whatever I type in into my chat message here, because I've chosen a chat trigger, it should go inside of my agent and then go to the chat model and return to me whatever I've typed in. Guess what? You just made your own simple ChatGPT system. So once you've paid, some credits, maybe $5 into your OpenAI account, everything should be up and running. So let's give this a try now. So, hey GPT, how is the weather in Los Angeles today? And there we go. It's going to say, I'm sorry, but I'm unable to provide real-time weather updates. I recommend checking a reliable weather, website or app. And that's fine because it's just the large language model. So I can actually put in something like, what should the weather be like in Los Angeles based on historical data? So now it's actually going to bring back the information. So based on historical data, the weather in Los Angeles is typically warm, sunny throughout the year. The city has a Mediterranean climate, and the average temperature in LA ranges from the mid 60s to mid 70s. All right, so now we've got our credentials set up. So good job. So if you haven't already, make sure that you set up your Google credentials and your OpenAI credentials, because we're going to need that for the project for this course. All right, it's time for our second quiz. Here we go. Question number 1, where can I find my n8n version? Is it on the left side, clicking my username and the 3 dots, going to settings, and it's in the bottom left? Is it in the middle area below the credentials section? Or is it in the execution section? If you said the first one, on the left side, clicking my username and the 3 dots, going to the settings, and in the bottom left, you're right. Question number 2. What is one of the benefits of credentials in n8n? Is it making n8n backwards compatible? Or is it being able to reuse credentials across multiple workflows? If you said being able to reuse credentials across multiple workflows, you're right. Question number 3. When viewing nodes, what is the usual flow of a node window? Is it output, settings, input? Or is it input, settings, output? If you chose input, settings, output, you're right. Question number 4. If there's a problem with a workflow, where should I look? The Executions tab or the Workflows tab? If you chose the Executions tab, you're right. Congratulations. So in n8n, you want to move beyond the simple automations and you want to understand how to structure your workflows. And that is really important to start thinking like an automation architect, someone who's going to be building these automations and designing them. And so it's important to understand the various different flow types, sub-workflows, and design patterns. Usually, a workflow will always have a trigger of some kind. Usually it's a manual trigger or a scheduled trigger or a webhook or action that triggers an entire workflow to start. From there, when we get into really complex workflows, it's a great idea to have sub-workflows, and that's for complex and repetitive tasks. It allows us to create reusable components, and you could think of them like functions in programming. And finally, we've got design patterns. You're going to see this in a lot of your workflows, but generally we see this in the world of software. Design patterns help us to make things easier. And, they're used to help us in error handling. They're used for modularity and scalability and for standardization. So when you do hand off your workflow to somebody else, maybe it's a colleague or teammate at a, workplace, or maybe it's another automator who's going to be helping you out on a really big job. That's where making sure that you have design patterns and ways that, it's easy to understand will be very helpful. Now, we'll dive into these in just a bit, but it's important that you understand some of these fundamentals of flow creation. One of the most important things inside of n8n is the data structure. Specifically, what we use a lot inside of n8n is something called JSON. So what is JSON? JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, or JSON. It's a standard format that allows us to exchange data between different services, and it's simple and it's human readable. Everything is created in something called key value pairs. And so you have a key such as name, and then you've got a value such as John Doe, and email johndoeexample.com, right? So you can see that there, it's a key and a value pair. Understanding JSON is essential because this is how n8n communicates with various nodes. Another important thing inside of n8n is JavaScript. JavaScript is in a lot of the coding portions of n8n. And so you're going to see this all over the place. And knowing some basic JavaScript items gives us additional superpowers within n8n. So even though n8n is meant to be like a no-code, low-code type of platform, JavaScript components and expressions can really enhance your workflows and take them to the next level. And even if you don't know all the JavaScript in the world, you can use AI like ChatGPT and others to actually create the JavaScript for you. So for example, I'm just going to create a little chat trigger here, and then I'm going to add a set node here, just like that. Let's just write in the word test here. And I can just click on this arrow to see the whole screen. I'm going to double click on this, and I can just click and drag this chat input here, just like that. And as you could see, I've actually got some JavaScript here. And it says $JSON.chat input. As you could see, I can actually access any of these. I can do .action, .session ID, just by changing what comes after this. But you notice right here, the double curly braces to start and double curly braces to end. Everything in between there is JavaScript. All right. And these variable names start off with a $. So $JSON, and I can access any of these JSON items. All right. And these are key value pairs. So a simple parrot app is this here. So now I could just type in hello and boom, I get back hello. All right. I could say hi there. And now I get hi there back. All right. So it's a very simple little, what we call a parrot app. And as you can see, it just brings that out. I can even change this thing to output here. There we go. So now I could type in hello world. And now, as you can see, it's not coming back as JSON. It's literally taking the output and putting that out as text. And that's another way that you can actually manipulate the data. But specifically, this is the JavaScript. Now, if I want to see this a little bit more clearly, I can actually make sure that I'm in expression mode right here. And you see fixed and expression. And then this little tiny icon, if you could see that, it's like a tiny little square here. I'm going to see if I can actually zoom in here. There you go. This one right here, if I click on that, it'll bring us to this here. I'll have to go back into 100%. But you could see here on my left and my right, I can actually, change the JavaScript inside of here. And that's a really important thing to be able to do that. If I click outside of this, I come back here. If I click outside of this again, back to canvas, I come back here. So there are a few common JavaScript items that will, go really, really far inside of n8n. So here we go. The first one is if you put in the double braces in any of your actual items as an expression, you'll be able to write any JavaScript code you want. So anything you want, you can actually put inside of there as JavaScript, and it'll usually convert it. Next, if I want to access a certain node, so sometimes inside of your workflow, you are several nodes in, and you need to access something from the first or second or third node, but you're like 10 nodes out. Well, by putting in, this actual bracket with node name and then the field, you can access any data from any node in the entire workflow. This is really, really important because many times you're going to have a situation where you need data, but you don't need it from the previous from the previous node. You need it from, several nodes deep. And that is why you use this exact command. And this is why we name nodes really well so that it's easy to access them anywhere in your workflow. Next is the $JSON command. That one there will access all of the JSON elements inside of a previous node. And by using $JSON.field, you get the actual key value pair of whatever field you want. Another one is something called run index. That specifically is a counter of how many times this specific node that you have this code on has been run. It is very useful, especially when you're doing large loops. Another one is the date. Many times you want to know what date it is today or the time. And so the $now brings in everything, including the date, time, and so on. And you can format it in many of the different ways. In this case here, this is the year, month, and day. And these last two items are so powerful, but they require you to use another node called a code node. So as you could see, if I actually hit tab and I type in code, I can now get a JavaScript code node here. And so inside of this here, all I have to do is I can actually replace this at the top here, and I can put in the $execution.customdata.set, and I could type in any key I want and any value. So let's call this here my variable, and let's call the value here 5. So now I'll add another code node here. And over here, I'll just create a new var. So I'm going to create a new variable called myvar. All right, and I'll just zoom in a bit so you can see this here. And it's got the information there. And then underneath that, I'm going to be typing this in here. Const items is equal to input.all. And then I'm going to basically put my var inside of there, which is basically going to add in whatever I had here. And if I click on execute step, as you can see right now, there's nothing because I haven't set my var. So let's actually do this here and connect it all up. Hit save. And now if I open chat and type in hello, there we go, you'll see that my var is 5. All right. So now this is a little bit more intermediate or advanced, but I just want to show you all that you can actually do that within your actual code, is adding these variable names inside of it. Now, if you aren't sure what to do here, you can always go to ChatGPT to actually put this in, but this is for more intermediate and advanced users who want to get even more out of n8n. But I put it there just so that you can see that this does exist inside of n8n, and you can actually use this to store information within a single workflow execution. So knowing a bit of JavaScript will help you out, especially when you're actually building more complex workflows. So now another thing that happens inside of n8n is a lot of times, when you're actually working with a lot of information, you don't want to always keep on calling certain things, especially if you're using APIs or, trying to get information. And so every single time, if you're supposed to call like a web URL or something, that can cost a lot of time, money, and even cause you to get banned if you actually, are constantly pulling something, and they'll just say, oh, it's a bot, and it'll kind of like ban your IP. So one of the nice things that n8n has is something called pin data, and it's this little icon here which actually keeps the data held there. So whenever you're doing a workflow, especially during testing, that's going to be important. But let's quickly just show you what what some of those data items can look like. And so, for example, I'm going to use something here called an HTTP node or HTTP request. And from here now, I can actually access any website. So I'm going to access my own here at solomonchrist.com. And if I actually put that inside of here and I do a get, I click on execute step, it's going to gather the entire HTML of that page. Now, if I continue to do this, pretty soon the website is going to realize that it's a bot and your IP will end up getting blocked. So one of the nice things is that you can actually click on pin data, and that'll actually keep this data here. And so by pinning the data, I don't have to constantly go back and call the website again. So if I actually click on execute workflow now and I've pinned the data, well, the data stays the same. All right. So I have all this information that I can work with. So pinning and scraping data. All right. It's a big topic because a lot of times when you're using n8n or you're hearing about automations and automators, a lot of people are doing this. Okay. So let's go over, basically what it is, how pinning works, and also what scraping is all about and some of the legal issues. Now, once again, the reason why I'm teaching this here is I want you to understand the background behind it, and my goal is to teach you the basics. Afterwards, what you do with it, that's up to you, but I want you to understand the entire landscape here and what it actually is. Number one is the HTTP node, and that's going to give you what we call a basic scrape of a website. All right. You only scrape the websites that you have access to, that you're allowed to scrape. All right. So for example, I scrape my own. I have access to that. Or if you get permission generally, and there's several ways to get permission. Now, of course, does this mean that, you're not allowed to scrape? Well, not exactly. So yes, you could scrape websites, especially if they're public websites, but it is kind of a little bit of a, situation. So I'm going to go over what I do know. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a legal person. I'm an AI automator. All right. So I'll go over kind of like the basics, and then kind of what we can do to actually be able to scrape some of the data, especially, if you're trying to help out a client or a customer. Scrape only when needed. You want to check the rules per site. There's something called a robots.txt file. It'll kind of tell you if you're allowed to scrape data. And workflows should reduce calls. That's where pinning the data comes in. All right. To help reduce these calls with various websites and APIs, n8n has the pinning functionality. All right. So as you know, it saves time. It's great for testing, and the data that comes from the pins, it freezes that data. Okay. So really, really important, especially when you're going to be, building an app that, let's say, has to get data from maybe a client's website. Okay. As long as the client is giving you permission and their system, actually allows for it, then it's okay, right? As long as you've got that permission in writing. Now let's go over some of the legal issues here and the risks to, scraping. As I said, I'm not a lawyer, but I'll go over some of the stuff that does happen. Number one, if you scrape without permission, well, pretty soon the website, especially if it's one of the higher end ones, will figure it out and you will get IP bans. In some cases, you'll get cease and desist letters, and in some cases, even legal action. All right. So if you're trying to scrape things like LinkedIn or Amazon or Instagram, you can violate their terms of service by doing so. All right. Then on top of that, let's say, it is allowed and, it's working out fine. Well, then if the website structure changes and you've created an entire automation that's focused on the way this actual structure is. So if someone wrote an HTML page and now all of a sudden they've got a brand new version of how they do things, well, your entire workflow could break just because you're using a version of the website and how it was designed before, but the website's constantly changing, and now your workflow breaks, and now you have to constantly go back and fix it. So that's another challenge to scraping as well. Next is performance and scalability. All right, it could become very CPU intensive, especially with large loops that take in large amounts of data. All right, some scrapes can be like 5 megabytes, 10 megabytes, but you do that 1,000 times and it adds up, right? And coming back to rate limiting. All right, I'll just remove my camera here so you can see that. Most websites have rate limits, CAPTCHAs, and even bot detection. So things like Cloudflare and so on. So if you don't have proper proxies in place or throttling or headers or, set up your workflows in a way that works, n8n may actually get blocked. And so now you can't even access that site. So it kind of defeats the whole entire purpose. And the most important point is that there are better tools out there that exist that give you a better experience, and you're not going to get into many of those situations. Things like Apify, Bright Data, and several others are far more suitable and reliable and maintainable, especially if you're building out, a client app that's supposed to work in the long run. All right, so keep that in mind, especially when you're doing that. And, once again, I am not a legal person. I'm an AI automator. You want to check with your local laws and regulations to figure out what you can and cannot scrape. All right. So now we're going to go into key nodes. All right, so these are nodes that are going to be important, especially when you're working on workflows. These are the ones that, I use a lot, and a lot of automators, they use it all the time. We're going to start off with trigger nodes, and then we're going to get into logic and control nodes, as well as data and connectivity nodes. So let's start off with trigger nodes. So to start any workflow, we usually need a trigger node. All right, and so there's several different types of trigger nodes that you're going to find in n8n. Manual and chat trigger nodes. These ones are used to actually start a workflow either by clicking the execute workflow button or by typing a chat message inside of the chat. These are usually the common ones, especially when people are starting out a flow and they want to test something out. Usually when I start designing, I usually will use these because then I could test it without, worrying about an external item that needs to call the actual workflow. All right. So usually, especially when I'm designing, I start off with a manual or a chat trigger just to get started. The next type of trigger node is a webhook or an email trigger. So a webhook is you've created an external application and then you call an endpoint, which n8n actually shows you. And then once you call it, it will actually fire off the workflow. All right, so that's the webhook one. And then for the email one, you've got two different email types. You've got the IMAP email node and you've got a Gmail email trigger. Both of them will get fired the second a new email comes in. And so both of those types of trigger nodes are very, very helpful when you're designing apps for yourself or for clients externally, where they don't need to go into the n8n app. They just go into your front end, whether it is, an email comes in or you've created a nice front end web page for them and they could just click a button and all of a sudden the n8n stuff happens in the background. Next, we've got the schedule node and the form node. For the form node, kind of like what we had with webhooks, a form is created, but the nice thing is you can actually have n8n create that form. Now, the challenge with that is, of course, if you're trying to build something that's like a white label, brandable type of website for your client, well, then you're probably building something custom, and that's where the webhooks come in. But if you don't need to, and if you're like fine with your client knowing that it's n8n, under the hood, that's fine, then you want to use the form node. And this really gets into forms really, really fast. If you want to make a nice visual for your client and you just want to get them into something really nicely, well, then the form is a great little node. And once they enter all the information in the form, well, that starts the workflow. For the schedule node and the node trigger, what it does is it creates something called a cron job inside of Linux, or a schedule based on your specification. So it could be either daily, it could be every hour, every minute, which I think is overkill depending on what you're doing, or every week, every month, and so on. So you can kind of determine when this is going to be run, but basically at that moment in time, it will run it. And so that's kind of like, maybe you're doing a weekly report and that's something that you've built for a client. Maybe you're making a monthly newsletter and you want to know what the monthly newsletters are. I don't know, whatever it is that you're designing, you can use a schedule node if you know it is something that's supposed to happen regularly. And finally, the last three trigger nodes we're going to talk about is the error trigger node, the file trigger node, and the sub workflow trigger node. each one is used for something completely different. Error triggers are fired when there's an error in n8n. And usually you could actually state, that this workflow, which has an error trigger, can be called from other workflows. And a nice workflow that a lot of people will create is they'll have one workflow that is for all errors in n8n, and then they make sure that they connect that workflow up to all their other workflows using the settings. And it's like, okay, every time there's an error, it all comes down to this one error workflow. And this is great for like making some really nice debug information, especially when you're building more complex apps. Well, then maybe you want all errors to go out to like a Slack message or to a Telegram, or maybe an email is sent. Next are file triggers. File triggers are useful to detect a change in a file or a new file inside of a directory. All right, so you've got Google Drive's file trigger system, and you've also got one that's built into n8n, which works off of the actual file system that your n8n is installed on. Now, it's important that you understand when I say the file system that n8n is installed on, well, if you're using Docker, it's within the Docker file system. A lot of times, if people are using a VPS system, they think that it's on the main file system, but there is a Docker system that's running n8n. So actually, your actual file system is within the Docker system itself. So keep that in mind. Just a tip for those who are a little bit more intermediate or advanced. And finally, we've got the sub workflow node. And the sub workflow trigger node is called from another workflow. And so the second it is called, it'll run, whatever it needs to run, and then afterwards it'll come back. So that trigger for sub workflow is a really important one that is used when you're actually breaking down big workflows into sub workflows. So let's go ahead and we're going to start off with the trigger nodes. So let's actually go into our n8n here, and let me just delete these here so that we don't need these guys here. This is a trigger right here. This is actually one of them. This is when we click on the execute workflow. All right. So this is the, one of the basic ones that we usually use all the time. Then there is the chat trigger node. So if I click on chat, and there it is, chat trigger. So these are the two main basic nodes when we actually are looking at starting things, especially when you're starting off a new workflow. Many times, you're starting off with a chat because you're going to be setting up some form of AI or some form of interaction where a person needs to chat with something. So that could be going from Telegram into some workflow, or WhatsApp into workflow, or it could be at times, where you just need to chat with an LLM. Okay, so a chat message received is a great opportunity. Also, at the same time, this is a great option if you're looking to just, transmit some data without having to worry about setting up a form, because that actually takes some time still. Whereas I could just send some data right now inside of this and, kind of work out a flow and say, okay, I'm picking up this data. So I usually use that every now and again whenever I need to, kind of get just some data into a workflow. The next type of trigger is known as a schedule trigger. So if I just do this here and I type in schedule, all right, you can see that. And I can actually set it for, days, seconds, minutes, hours, weeks, whenever I want, or even custom. And so for this here, if you want to do custom, you do need to understand some Linux commands. Specifically, it's a cron job is what it is under the hood. But basically, we get to set it on when it's going to run. Now, usually when you're coding or creating a workflow, we don't do this first. We do this after the workflow is made, and we could kind of rely on the workflow to actually work, and then we schedule something. Once you know a workflow is working, then you test it, right? And usually when it comes to test, well, we'll do maybe every minute or every couple seconds first. So if it's something that I'm going to do, like let's say a daily schedule, well, first test, every 30 seconds or something that, is this thing running, or every couple minutes. So it's like, okay, did it actually hit? Because sometimes, the actual trigger will hit and you run into an error. And it's like the only way to check it is an execution. Now, you don't want to be waiting an entire day before you do that. So whenever you're working with actual schedule triggers or cron jobs, first start off with a manual, something like an execute step command, like with the button execute workflow, or you could actually start off with a chat trigger. All right. So if you want to kind of test that without having to wait. But usually the reason why I don't like to set these up is because it will actually register a cron job. Now, here's the caveat to all of this. The cron job does not run until you set this as active. So if you do not set this as active, it will never run. All right, so keep that in mind. But here's the next part, and here's the other part of the schedule triggers. Once you do set it, it's a cron job in the back end. And sometimes I've had times where it's like, you'll delete it over here, but then it's still running in the back end inside of Linux. And then you have to, go and do some fiddling around and kind of, stop a cron job or kind of, remove it. So that requires some more intermediate or advanced knowledge. I would just recommend using ChatGPT to kind of get rid of those sometimes, but it does happen from time to time. So schedule triggers, I only put in when I am absolutely sure that I'm ready to do it and, the workflow is working good. All right, so now we're going to go into a form trigger. So I could actually type in form here, and this is an n8n form. And you're going to see here that there's a trigger here. So I'm going to click on new n8n form event. And the interesting thing is that you can actually put in the information that you want in the form. So you can add all kinds of elements. So I'm going to call this here test form. All right. And as you can see, I can actually, kind of go from here and put some inputs here. But basically, what's going to happen is I'm going to put a description for this form. This is a test form. So in order for this to work, I do need to hit the execute step, but it's not going to work yet because I don't have any data coming in from the form. So I have to add a form element. All right. So I'm going to put inside of here a field name, and I'm going to say test data. And then from here, I can put a placeholder, enter some data. There we go. So now when I click on execute step, there it is. That's my form. And I can put some information in. I can put in hello world right here. And then boom, it comes in. And as you can see, I brought it in, okay? Now, as I said, the production URL only works when you actually click on active. If you don't, then it's only the test URL, but this will not work on its own because guess what? Every single time you have to click on execute step and listen for an actual input. So that's not actually practical in production. So that's why it's, it's great for testing, but in a production edition, you have to click on the production URL, select that URL, and then make sure that this is active, and then it'll run in the background all the time. All right. So that is the form trigger. So the webhook and email triggers are a little bit more advanced. So I could go for a webhook here, and this is a webhook, type of trigger here. And once again, similar to the form trigger, you got your test URL and production URL, but the point is you're sending data via this. And there's different ways that you can actually send the data here. There's get, there's post, and so on. Now, I'm not going to go dive deep into this. I actually have my node by node tutorials and trainings. You could check those out. But just for this, know that this exists. So if you want to create a custom, front end, you could do that with the webhook. Now, an important part of the webhook is you can choose how you respond. Specifically, you can respond immediately, or for many cases, you are going to be using respond to the webhook node. It's another node which usually goes at the end of a workflow, and that is where most of your commands are going to be, especially if you're creating front ends for a client. All right. So keep that in mind. I'm not diving deep into this. This is just, like in this training here, this is just an overview of what nodes exist. All right. Next one is our email nodes. There's two different types of email nodes. So trigger nodes. There's the IMAP one. This is assuming that you already have your IMAP data. Like your POP3 and so on, you're going to know that. And if you click on credential here, it's going to ask you for everything, your username, your password, your host, your port, whether you're using SSL or TLS. These are all, usually given to you when you're setting up an email. And, it's really great for like things like Microsoft accounts and stuff like that. But generally, you'll get email systems that have this. And you could actually go into the documentation here and you could kind of see how to set this up for the various forms of emails. But when it comes to Gmail, I actually use the Gmail node instead. If I actually go here and I type in Gmail and I click on that, you're going to see that there's a trigger on message received. And that one is going to then require a credential. Now, this is my own, local account. That's why there's no credential here. But on my other one here, where we did set up that credential, if I actually go here and I type in Gmail on message received, and now you see my Gmail account is already connected. All right. So once again, the biggest key for this specific node here is that whether you're using either email node, it's always going to check every single time for anything that's incoming. So you need to make sure that, if you're not going to be using it, well, be careful because sometimes this will be running and you're wondering, well, where did all my emails go? Sometimes that happens. And so you got to check what's going on because if you already put something in place and you got a trigger, well, sometimes your workflow may be running and you got to set it to inactive and make sure that it's not running. So that does happen from time to time. Once again, I'm not diving deep into, how these nodes work. If you want to go into more deeper dives, I do my node for node training, and that one goes into more deeper, explanations on each one of these nodes or in many of the nodes that we're actually going to be going over. So now the error trigger, so if I actually go here, I type an error trigger here, this one here gets called whenever there's an error. And I can actually fetch a test event here. And as you can see, it's going to show where's the execution. You get the workflow ID. You get a lot of information. And with that information, you want to use it to do something. So for example, what's the error message? And you can even do like, what's the URL of the actual workflow? Really, really powerful stuff, right? So if you're actually, trying to debug something and you want a better system, especially when you're building like a production app for a client, this is great because it kind of alerts you what's going on. So as you can see, we also have something called a file trigger. So this is on your local system drive or your VPS, virtual private servers drive. All right, if it's a VPS, then it's actually on the Docker. So keep that in mind, okay? Now, what's going to happen is it's going to check in that specific folder where you've selected whether there is a change to a specific file or changes to a specific folder. So many times you're going to say, okay, changes to a specific folder. Whenever I drop a file inside of there, do something with that file. So that's great if you're doing document management, such as, someone scans in a receipt and now that receipt actually goes into that folder. And now from there, something happens. And Google Drive also has one. So if I actually type in Google Drive here, and you can actually see here, if I click on Google Drive, you could see here on changes to a specific file and on changes involving a specific folder. So it's the exact same functionality, but done via Google Drive. I usually use that because it's a lot easier to manage an online system. And at the end of the day, it also, frees me up from going into Docker and going into different subsystems when most of the time I'm just trying to manipulate files. And a lot of times I could do that using the Google systems. Finally, another one I'd like to share with you is a sub workflow. All right, so here we go, sub workflow, execute sub workflow. When I click on that, you're going to see here when executed by another workflow. All right. So the second any other workflow calls this, you're going to see here that it's actually going to, call this specific workflow here. And I can actually, choose how the data is coming in. Usually we want to click on accept all data. And that way it just, brings in all the data for anything. And all you can see here, for example, there's nothing in here. But if I sent some data to this workflow, it would actually all come inside of here. And so usually you want to send JSON into this and then do something. So this is great for a function. So imagine now it's like me just starting a brand new function inside of programming. This is a clean sub workflow ready to go. And I could do whatever I want to, get the data to be manipulated. All right. So that was triggers. Let's go on to now some logic and control flow nodes. So the if node, that is one of the most useful ones. You also have a switch node as well, which it does kind of similar things, but it gives you more options. But if nodes are always used everywhere. And so it directs flows based on an if statement. So if this, then true. If that, then false. And that's it. That's all it does. So you're going to be using if nodes a lot. The next one is split in batches, or the loop node. And this one here allows you to take data and loop through it one item at a time. So this is great for those spreadsheets where you have to actually do like a lot of logical items on top of every single, row in the spreadsheet. And we're going to actually see that in the project inside of this program. But the point is the loop node is so important and we use that everywhere. The next three nodes are used a lot as well. The set node is used to manipulate data and make sure that we have the data coming out in a format that we want for any program or app that we're, looking to export out to. And so many times you'll have data coming in from, let's say, one type of app, and it provides, maybe a certain amount of, key value pairs in JSON. But let's say you have to add in now an extra field. Well, to do that, that's where the set node comes in, and we can actually add in an extra field inside of that data. The switch node gives us opportunities to go between many different options. Unlike the if node, which only gives us like a true or a false, the switch node can give us several different outputs. And that is a really important thing because maybe you have something coming in where there's several different options. Think of a t-shirt selector, right? And you need to choose the color of a shirt. Well, here comes in a new t-shirt order, and now maybe there's different colors, and the color could be red, blue, green, white, orange, brown, whatever that is. And so now you can have a switch that goes out and it has all those different options, and maybe for each one there's a different workflow, right? So that's where a switch can come in, and based on that maybe you take different actions, right? So that's where a switch is very, very useful. The next one is the merge node, and the merge node is a really powerful node which takes a few inputs, and only when all those inputs have been, obtained, that's the only time it will create an output. Now, this is really useful if you've got workflows which rely on other workflows to be done and you're waiting on that data. And so sometimes it'll be like, you know what, I've obtained data one, and now the other workflow will take some time. But once it's done, it goes into a merge. And now from there, once that happens, the merge says, yep, I've got both data items, and then it outputs. So it's really, really great for that when you have sequential data or several data items that need to be done and you throw them into a merge. And now you can actually, rely on knowing that it's not going to continue the entire workflow until the merge hits. All right, so I use that a lot in workflows, and that really helps out. The next node is the wait node, and you're going to use this a lot, especially when you're trying to, reduce rate limits, especially on websites like Google, for example. You're actually trying to send in updates to, let's say, update a spreadsheet and so on. Well, if you try and send it all at the same time, n8n will move fast. But the trouble is, Google will say, hey, you know what? You're just sending too many requests at a time. So the wait node will put in a number of seconds before it'll go on to the next step. And so, for example, in that example, 5 seconds as a wait node will allow Google to easily allow you to, put in, let's say, 100 rows. Whereas if you don't have a wait node, it'll definitely come back at you and say, sorry, 429, too many executions. All right. So keep that in mind. Wait nodes are, incredible, and you're going to use them everywhere. So let's go over the if node here. So if I actually go here and I type in if, all right, you're going to see here that the if usually has several values. And I'm actually going to create like a chat trigger because that's a little bit easier right now. Let's do a chat trigger here. And from here, I'm just going to connect this up here like that. And I'm going to just type in hi, just like that, so that we get some data into the if. If I double click on the if, you're going to see here, I've now got several different fields that came in. And I can now say, okay, well, if this chat input, I can actually click and drag the value here. And I could say if it's equal to, based on the data type. And so in this case here, I know that this is a string value because it's text. All right. Once again, your programming comes back. And so if it's a string value, I can actually say, does it exist? True or false? Or is it empty? True or false? In this case, is it equal to whatever? And so I could say this equal to hi. If I click on execute step, it's correct. But if I say the word no, now it goes to the false branch, right? So that's how you do it. You can actually, select different things. You can add more conditions, like, you can and something else. So I could say and action is equal to, let's say, send message, right? So now if I type in, let's say, hi and send message, well, there we go. It's true. But if I change this here and I say, well, if it's equal to send message to, now it's false because both of these have to be true, right? But only one of them is true. And so you could actually do that. You could change this from and to or. And so now if I click this again, well, one of them is true. So it's going to go to, the true branch. All right. Now you're going to notice with an if node, it always goes to true or false. That's it. All right. If you want more outputs, there is another node called a switch node. All right. So if I actually type in here, switch, there it is. And now for the switch node, I can actually take that input again, except this time I can actually say, okay, here we go. If the chat input is this, hi, if it's equal to hi, let's say, right? Well, then I could choose what the output is. So the output could say, let's say, said hi. And then I can add a different one. And I could say this here, if the chat input is hello world or hello. All right, there we go. I got two of them. So hi, and I could say said hello. All right. So now, based on what it says here, I could choose what it's going to do. And specifically, if none of these work and it comes out as an error, I can click on the settings panel here, and I can go over here and I could say continue, but using the error output. So now I've got 3 outputs here. Said hi, said hello, and then there's an error. So I'm going to just put here, hello. There, you could see it went to the hello side, right? And then I'm going to just say hi. It goes to the hi side. Then I'm just going to put ASDF. And it doesn't go anywhere because ASDF is on error, right? But now I can say, okay, well, if it's anything else, all right, so if chat input is not empty, okay? So what that means, it's just not empty, but any of these did not hit. So you're going to notice here that it went to this one here, and I'm just going to say everything else. Now you notice here that it does this one first, then this one, then this one, and then finally, if there's any errors, it also errors out. So it does it in order. So now if I type in ASDF again, now it went to everything, as you can see here, right? So that's the whole, way that a switch command works. And it's going to do it from top to bottom, and you can have multiple outputs, all right? This is great. For example, you're working with a client who's got, let's say, a Shopify store, and they've got a product that has several colors. And so now you can actually feed that color data in, and based on, the color that is coming in, whether it's blue, green, black, orange, red, whatever, right? You can actually have all those different outputs, and maybe it goes to a different provider based on, where you're actually, supplying the actual product. And so this is a very real use case. You've got people who are running a Shopify store and their actual suppliers are in China. They're using AliExpress. And now it's like, oh my goodness, there's different suppliers for different products, even though they're selling the same products. But now the red shirt goes to, supplier 1. The blue shirt goes to supplier 2, and so on and so forth. So that could actually be created right here. The next one is the edit set command here, or the node. So I'm going to do this here. I'm going to add in a set node. And this is a very, very powerful node. We use it all the time. Let me just connect this up here. All right. And so now over here, you see how it says chat input? I could take that there, and I can actually change this from chat input. I could change this to the word output. So now my JSON, when I click on it, it's going to have like the word output. And if I click on JSON, you're going to see that's the only thing that comes out. So now I can define how my JSON finally comes out. And so that's really powerful when you're trying to create custom outputs, which have to go to, let's say, different applications, right? So maybe you're bringing something in from HubSpot, and now it has to go out into like Gmail, right? And so maybe you just need the name, you need the email, and you're going to say a message. And so I could have like over here, name, and then I could have something like the email, and I can have message right here. And so now my email could be, let's say, whatever, all right? Or someone had brought it in, and then I could have a message, whatever email message, right? So hello, Bob, nice to meet you, okay? And so when I click on execute step, I now have all three of these. And so imagine now you're bringing in all this data from something like HubSpot, and it comes down with every single thing, and it's a very big list of JSON data, but you only need like 3 items. Well, that's where a set, command could come in and help to reduce down the entire JSON values. Very, very powerful node. Our next node is the merge node. All right. So if I actually type this in, type in merge, as you notice, there are 2 inputs. All right. And that is a very, very important thing because, I can actually have certain inputs come in, but it's going to do it, based on how many inputs I want. So I can have up to 10 different inputs, but the biggest key here is it will not proceed until all inputs are found. So if there's no input coming in, let's say you only had 9 out of 10, or if you have, let's say, 2 inputs, only 2 came in, well, it's going to just, it's going to wait until both come in. Now, this is really useful if you definitely need certain workflows to happen, like 1 and 2. And let's say the second one is kind of like it's waiting for some data. But once it gets that data, now you can actually go to the next step. That's where I use these a lot. And it's really, really powerful that way. But there's other things that you could do. Once again, like I said, I'm not going in, deep into these nodes. It's just so that you understand that these nodes exist. But if you want to see some of the deep dives, I've got my node by node training that, I put up on YouTube all the time. And you're going to start seeing those nodes where I go deeper into each one of these, more powerful nodes. Next is the wait node. You're going to use it everywhere. Okay. So here we go. I'm going to type in wait here. All right. And all it does is it just puts a timer before it goes to, to the next step. So if I actually just do this here, and then I actually go back to edit fields, right? So edit, there it is. And then I actually just say execute the previous node here. I could take my chat input and I could just call this output here. There we go. So now when I actually say hello, I hit enter, you see it's waiting 5 seconds. And then after 5 seconds, it comes back. There it is. All right. So, basically that's how the wait node works. All right. Very simple. Okay. So now that we've seen some logic and control flow nodes, let's go over our main data and connectivity nodes. All right. So beyond the logic and trigger nodes, n8n offers essential data manipulation and connectivity nodes that enable your workflows to handle information effectively and connect with external services. The execute subworkflow node is a common node, and it calls additional workflows that are inside of n8n. It helps to reduce complexity, and the subworkflow trigger is called on that other workflow, which you could send data along to as well. The next node is the HTTP request node. It is a versatile node, and it's used in so many different workflows, and it enables you to communicate with virtually any API on the internet. You can send and retrieve data from web services. You can access services without a dedicated n8n node, and it supports various types of HTTP methods such as GET and POST and so on. Next is the big one. This is how we become AI and automation professionals. The AI agent node. It's a LangChain node for those of you who are more intermediate or understand some of the coding. An AI agent node will allow you to plug in any large language model, any LLM that you want. It'll allow you to choose memory and even create custom tool calls. It's used in many AI workflows, and it allows for easy setup of AI. And this specific type of node inside of n8n is called a cluster node. And a cluster node is a type of node which has several different nodes within it. And finally, there is the code node. The code node is another versatile node that we use a lot in so many different workflows. It provides a way to run custom JavaScript code for complex data manipulation or logic. Now, many times, if you don't know JavaScript, you're trying to write things out. And even if you do, I will generally go over to ChatGPT or some other LLM model and say, hey, can you write me the code to do this? I'm using n8n, and I give it more context, and then it actually writes the code out for me. But it's still important to know some of the JavaScript, so at least you can manipulate it, because sometimes some of these code items just need a few tweaks. But yeah, basically the code node is such a useful node, and I use it like all the time. So executing the sub workflow, you saw the one end of that. So now I could actually do this again. So here we go, sub workflow. And in this case here, I could actually call this one again. All right. Now be careful when you do this. You don't want to loop this here. But I'm going to put inside of here, I'm going to take this edit fields here. And that way it's kind of like it's going to do that last. And then from here, I'm going to do the sub workflow, execute sub workflow node. All right. And then I get to choose which workflow. In this case here, we're going to be coming right back to this one. So the test workflow. So I'm going to go here, choose from the list, test workflow. There it is. Run once with all items, and it's going to pass all this in. And so now it's going to be basically the output JSON chat input. So that's what I know is coming in, and it's this here. So I know that that's the data going out there. So when I hit save and I do this here, and I change this to all accept all data. Now let's go back, save it. And once again, I'll say hello. And now it's going to run this as a sub workflow. And so we wait 5 seconds. It's going to call this again, but through the sub workflow command here. It's going to now call it from there. And you see it came back as hello. But if I click on my executions tab, you'll see that it actually ran it as a sub workflow. There you go. So this is where I, ran it. Okay, it ran these three. It called the sub workflow again. Right there, but now you see how it processed the data the second time around as a sub workflow. So that's where you see your sub workflows is in the executions tab. Next is the HTTP request node. Now you saw me using this earlier. I'll just show it to you again so that you kind of get an idea. And so basically what's going to happen is we're going to have HTTP request, and then you could choose any website. So in this case here, I'm going to go to the Solomon Christ website. That's my own website. And I'm going to, do that, put that inside of the get. And so now when I actually, type in hello, all right, that's going to go and it's going to grab all the data on the Solomon Christ website. So there it is. It picks up everything. So that's what it does. If you want to find out more information, I actually did the node for node on this one here. And there it is, the node for HTTP request. Okay, so you can actually see that there. All right, so go and check that out. But basically, this is how you actually get data from the web. And there's so many times where, you don't have access to an API. It's a brand new app that has just come out and you want to be able to access the information. So this is a great node for that. Next one is the code node. So the code node is a great node. It allows us for JavaScript. You've seen me use it already a little bit, inside of this tutorial. But basically what we use it for is for manipulating data in a way that generally we can't do with nodes at this point, right? So if you want to do some advanced stuff, many times you'll get, let's say, markdown information, or you'll get information where you need to parse or find certain data, and you're going to use something like regex inside of there. That's where, JavaScript can really shine. It can really help you out with that sort of stuff. But basically right here, if I actually just hit execute step, you're going to notice that it actually puts in this new field here right inside of there, right? So now it's like got this new field, session ID, action, chat input, and now, boom, my new field. I can add in anything I want inside of here. But basically that's how that works. And you can put in whatever code you want. One of the key caveats is you need to return JSON. If I don't return JSON, let's say I just put in like, ASDF, I'll just do that. Boom, it's going to break. It's going to say, oh, sorry, I don't understand. And that's because n8n is all about JSON. And so you want to make sure that even your output from your code is JSON. Once again, not diving too deep into the code node, just showing you that this actual code node exists. And finally, save the best for last, the AI agent node. That's right. Okay. So we're going to go in, we're going to type in AI agent. And once again, you can actually see, how this node looks. And as I told you before, this is a cluster node. All right. So the way it works is there's several different nodes within this node. So over here, we have the main AI agent. And then underneath it, we've got several items that we need. Number one is the chat AI. What's the chat model? So which LLM are we using? So in this case here, we're going to be using OpenAI. Let me just, turn off my camera for a bit. So there's the OpenAI chat model right below. So we're going to use that. But you see, there's so many others that we could use. I'm just going to use that one there. And I'm going to choose my OpenAI account. And over here, I'm using GPT 3.5 Turbo. And now from here, I can also choose to add memory. And usually simple memory, it just comes built in. It'll remember the last 5 things. And I could choose to use tools as well. So if you want to make something like a ChatGPT where it kind of remembers your stuff, well, then you add some memory. And so now when I actually type inside of here, I'll say, hi there. Can you tell me about Shakespeare? And it's going to go out, it's going to come back, and it's going to tell me all about Shakespeare. There you go. All right. So that's the cool thing. And now we've got AI access. All right. What you do with AI is up to you, but just want to show you that this node exists. All right. It's time for our quiz. So number 1, what are trigger nodes usually used for? Is it ending a workflow, in the middle of a workflow, or starting a workflow? If you said starting a workflow, you're right. Number 2, what is JSON? A short form for the name Jason, or JavaScript object notation? If you said JavaScript object notation, you're right. Number 3, what are some ways design patterns can help? Is it standardization and reusability? Or is it that they allow you to select colors on a page? If you chose standardization and reusability, you're right. Number 4, what kind of node is an AI agent node? Is it a simplified node, or is it a cluster node? If you chose cluster node, you're right. Great job. All right. So now we're moving on to design patterns. And design patterns are a very, very important part of programming, and we find it in the world of software all around us. Now, inside of AI and automations, and especially in n8n, the more you understand this, the easier it's going to be to build a lot of, really useful workflows. And so we're going to dive into, just the basics of this. Now, keep in mind, this is just, the very ground level of this. There are many other patterns available and more that will be developed over time as the AI industry is constantly growing and changing. But we're going to bring some of the patterns that we see in the software world, as well as what we've already seen in the automation world, coming together inside of the entire, AI ecosystem. So we're going to go over that right now. So you could think of these design patterns whenever you're building out various automations and n8n workflows. They help with standardization and reusability, and so much more. The first one I want to discuss is the TPO pattern. All right. The trigger, process, output pattern is the most common one for n8n workflows. And we use that all the time, right? There's a trigger, there's some process that we do, and then there's an output. Next, we have the error pattern. And this is a pattern that involves putting something called a try-catch style workflow together. And basically the concept is you're going to try to do something, and then whenever there's an error, you're going to send it off to a sub workflow or a secondary workflow to capture that error and now do something. And so the error pattern is something that you're going to see a lot of, or you're going to use a lot of. And especially when you get into like some deeper workflows, especially with clients, you want to make sure that you've got the error pattern inside of there, because you want to be able to report this to yourself, to your staff, to your software developers or whoever you're using, or even to your clients and customers, especially if you're trying to help them out. The next pattern is the chained pattern. So the chain pattern is something that is used to orchestrate a series of AI or API calls in a specific sequential order. All right, this is great when you've got some data which needs to be manipulated first by, let's say, some AI. Then that data that's been manipulated goes to an API call, which then comes back and again goes into another AI and then a final output. So this is a multi-step process, and so we call that a chained pattern. Speaking of which, let's talk about the orchestrator and gatekeeper pattern. All right. So we use this in AI, and you can think of it like a central manager that delegates items to other AIs to accomplish by breaking things down into tasks. All right. And that AI controls what the other AIs are going to do based on what it thinks is best. In LangChain, Crew AI, or AutoGPT ecosystems, we call this planner executor model, task-oriented agent framework, or meta agent or manager agent. So, there's a lot of different terms for it, but, you're going to see this a lot. The orchestrator, gatekeeper, or command pattern. So this is the whole entire set of ideas where you've got an agent controlling other agents, or you've got a workflow which is actually controlling other sub-workflows. The next one is the HIDL pattern, or human in the loop. And it is a very important one, and it's something that we specifically teach and love teaching all the time. This keeps humans in control, and it is a great thing to put right in the middle of workflows. Because basically, let's say you're going to send an email. Well, you don't want your AI to send that email. All right. So many times you're going to see a lot of AI automation firms who are trying this, and they're just allowing the email to go through. Now, it works in certain cases, but other times you just don't want that to happen. Right? Especially when you're sending a customer message, you want to make sure that you're having, some human eyes check that. And so what you want to do is you want to put in something like, create an email draft instead. That way there's a human being now who gets to check this. But with human in the loop, you can also have other forms of human in the loop where it will wait for the human being to respond before it takes the next actual step. And so the HIDL pattern, it actually waits for that human being. And so you're going to see that whenever you're creating a HIDL pattern or human in the loop pattern. The adapter pattern is where we make one API compatible with another API by changing one API format to match another. So for example, Salesforce may send snake case information, whereas n8n would map it to camel case for Notion. And finally, one of the last patterns I'd like to discuss is the observer pattern. And so when something happens, like a trigger, the whole goal of this specific workflow is to send several alerts or items to other workflows or other areas to take action. So for example, a sales rep, they supply a customer name, email, and maybe a phone number to a chatbot in Telegram or WhatsApp. And then the observer pattern with that will basically see that there's a note, and it'll send it to the CRM workflow, it'll send it to the email workflow, and maybe even to the AI voice VAPI agent workflow to make a call to the actual client. All right. So the observer is kind of like, here, I got some data in, let me tell everybody. And all these people are observing, they're waiting for this, kind of like a trigger, but a little bit more detailed because it's coming from a workflow that assigns all the different workflows that it needs to go to. And really, really powerful type of pattern. All right. So, coming back to the whole idea of design patterns, there are so many others. And you know what? Some of the patterns that I showed you may not even be applicable in the future as brand new AI, frameworks are going to start coming out, and it's going to change the way we think about actual development when it comes to, n8n, AI, and automation, because everything is changing every single day. And today in the software world, we see, the years of changes that have happened where we went from like HTML and then we got into things like PHP and MySQL for more advanced stuff. We get into Ajax and JavaScript, and then you get into, more advanced stuff as we get into things like React. And, now you're seeing all these new tools in Tailwind and so on. So over many, many years, brand new ideas came in and brand new thought processes and frameworks that change the entire software industry. We're going to see that over many years now in the AI and automation space. So keep an eye out for that. But right now, I just gave you some basic ones to hopefully get you started. Now, speaking of frameworks, this is something that I created to help me, especially when I'm thinking through problems and challenges. And I call it the SPLAT framework. All right. And basically, it provides a structured approach to designing effective n8n workflows. And it's something that has really helped me out, and hopefully it'll help you out as well. Basically, what we're doing is we're breaking down the development process or the creation of these entire automations into 5 distinct stages. And a lot of times it's helped me and saved me in some very challenging situations where, I had to really break down complex automations where I had to really think through it. And this helped me to kind of get through that. So the first thing is user stories. So in software, we actually have something called user stories, and that's how it works. We begin by defining what is the user story, and literally what is the story that a person is telling you. Like, hey, I've got to, take my, go high level data and then put it into maybe a spreadsheet or put it into like an email. Maybe you have to take everyone from go high level, throw it into a different email system, which, I don't have access to. And you as a developer or you as an automator, well, now you have to go into the API documents of that other system and connect up go high level system into these, automations. And that's where you're kind of like listening to the user story. What is their challenge? What are they saying? So clearly articulating the objective provides a guiding principle for the entire project. And so it's really important to get all the user stories together so that you can create a really good automation. Number 2 is to break down the problem. All right. So problem breakdown, that's the P in SPLAT. All right. And we're basically deconstructing the entire overall flow or idea. And literally, I'll just draw it out on paper, or there's some online tools where you can draw things. But before you put anything in n8n to lay it out, you want to first draw it out. And that's going to really save you time and, avoid the challenge where you get into what we call, workflow love, where you love your workflow, you work so hard on it, and it's like, I can't break it, right? So you want to basically do this before you actually lay anything down. So you want to break down the entire problem step by step by step. Next, once you've got that, then you go into the layout. And that's the L in SPLAT, where you're now going to lay it out inside of n8n by designing the node structure. Now, one of the nice things that you can do is you can use things like Claude Opus 4 and actually, give it the n8n docs and, it'll actually generate all this. If you haven't checked out, there's a really incredible video that Nate Herkelman created, and you should definitely check that out on how to use n8n or even Claude Opus 4 to generate entire workflows. So I highly recommend that. So go check that out. Next is AI. All right, this is such a big topic here, and this is the A in SPLAT. But basically, you want to identify, do we need AI? And that too, if so, what is AI going to do, and which specific AI model or LLM is required? And, what is the actual, prompt that we're going to use? Like, we have to really think through this. Most of the times, using AI costs you money. It takes more time than actually an automation without it. And that's because you're making a call to an external server or service many times. And then on top of that, if you're not able to get the right output, which in most cases, that's what ends up happening, is the first, second time, maybe even the third time, you're not getting the actual output because your prompt may not be correct, or sometimes the prompt is just not well formatted. And so now you're kind of going back and forth in your prompt engineering to create something better. Well, that can actually slow things down. Whereas sometimes it's just literally ask ChatGPT to create, let's say, something in JavaScript, which can do what the AI would have done, but now it's actually something that is reliable and structured, whereas AI is more of like, it's a probabilistic type of thing where it's kind of like fuzzy logic. It might work, but I don't know, maybe up to 80% of the time, 90%, who knows? But the thing is, if you need 100% guarantees, usually it's done without AI. But people, they think that I got to throw AI at everything. So first check if AI is required, and if so, what specifically is the prompt that you need, and which AI models are you going to need? And then that too, cost it out, right? And sometimes, I just ask GPT or I'll ask Perplexity, how much is the cost if I was supposed to do, X amount of calls to this API? Now, some of the areas where AI is really good is in summarizing text, analyzing data, generating content, or even making, really important decisions where it's like, man, I don't know. Sometimes, I want to find the intent of a message where someone sends an email and it's like, what was this email, actually trying to say? Is it a positive tone? Is it a negative tone? Is it a neutral tone? So that could be very important, especially when you're doing sales and customer service. And finally, we have T in the SPLAT method, which is test and edit. So you want to thoroughly test out your entire workflow. And a lot of times you're going to run into debugging errors. Debugging errors happen all the time, especially when you're refining the data flow. And what may work the first time, well, is it going to work on the 10th time or the 100th time or the 1000th time? I don't know. And the only way to test that out is literally go out and test it, right? Now, usually what will happen is, you can rely on it, but I've found that even with, the best GPT in the world, it's going to have times where it does fail. And that's because, you're sending it into the actual model and hoping that it's going to output data. And that's where you actually give it data structures inside of your actual AI systems where it's outputting exactly what you want. And then you'll do things like an if statement to check if it actually outputted that. And if it did, then continue. If not, go back and run it again. And then you use your run index to see how many times it does it. And after, let's say, 2 or 3 times, maybe you now start an error workflow. And then you say, hey, you know what? This didn't work out. And that responds to either you and your team or your client and says, hey, you know what? You may have to do this again. So as you could see, if you use the SPLAT framework, you're going to make better automations overall. All right, so it's time for another quiz. Let's go over design patterns and SPLAT. Question number 1. What is the most common design pattern that you're going to find in n8n? Is it orchestrator pattern, TPO pattern, or the HITL pattern? If you said TPO, trigger, process, output, you're right. Number 2, what does the S in SPLAT stand for? Is it software or is it stories? If you said stories, you're right. Number 3, which pattern passes data sequentially? Is it the observer pattern or is it the chain pattern? If you said chain pattern, you're right. Number 4, what are the steps in SPLAT? Is it stories, problem breakdown, layout, AI, test and edit, or is it simplify, program, layout, ask, and try? If you said the first one, stories, problem breakdown, layout, AI, test, and edit, you're right. Congratulations. All right, it's time to take action. That's right. I want you to now go on to this next step where we're actually going to create a project which is going to basically cover a lot of the things that you're going to use in the real world when you're working with clients and customers. So in this project, we are actually going to be combining data handling, API access, and AI analysis to create a powerful spreadsheet automation tool. And the workflow is going to read data from a spreadsheet. It's going to perform some AI-driven analysis, and then it's going to write the results back. Specifically, to keep it simple, we're going to take, person's name and date of birth, and then we're going to take that information and we're going to find out the day of the week that they were actually born and also what their horoscope sign is. And so that is going to be the summary that we're going to write back into the actual spreadsheet. So let's start off with the first step, which is parsing the spreadsheet. Now, inside of the spreadsheet, we're going to create a simple spreadsheet right now, which has ID, name, date of birth, and then we're going to create another one here for summary, just like that. Now, the summary section, we're going to keep empty because we're going to get the AI to put the information in. But basically, what's going to happen is we're going to start off with this sort of spreadsheet here. You notice in the first column, we've got an ID. Now, the ID is going to act like a unique key. Now, a lot of times, when you're using some more advanced systems, such as an actual database system like MySQL, or many people use something like Airtable, it's the same type of idea. You're going to have some form of ID that allows you to kind of see which row we're on. And then we're going to have, the information that goes and corresponds with that actual row. The reason why we use an ID is it allows us to keep accurate data mapping. So there might be two Mark Smiths, all right? And you might actually be surprised, but there might be two Mark Smiths with the exact same birthday, okay? And that is a possibility. Now, of course, we need more data to actually differentiate the two, but specifically an ID will differentiate them. And so that's going to really help us out so that we know that there are two Mark Smiths inside of this, entire list of information. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create this sample spreadsheet. Then we're going to read the spreadsheet using n8n. Then we're going to identify the key, which is the ID, and then we're going to map the data accordingly and take it in and actually grab the name and the date of birth and pass that over to OpenAI. So go ahead, take a moment. I'm going to pause it right here on the screen. All right, and that's going to give you an opportunity to write this information in. All right, so when you're done, you should actually see this sheet here. It's a very simple sheet. You've got your ID, 1, 2, 3. You've got your name, Mark Smith, Sherry Adams, Bobby Duvall. You got your date of births here, 13th of May, 1983, 16th of June, 1992, and 27th of January, 2016. And then you've got your summary column, all right? So this is what we're going to be filling in with the help of AI. All right, so now let's actually dive into actually designing something. So let's go ahead into our n8n, and we're going to create a new workflow here. All right, and let's do an execute workflow. So go ahead and just type in trigger manually, execute workflow, just a simple trigger. And from here now, the first thing that we got to do is we need to connect to our Google Drive. So specifically our Google Sheets. So I'm going to type in Sheets here. And if you remember from earlier, this is why we needed the credentials. All right, so you should have Google Sheets connected. So I'm going to now click on Google Sheets, and specifically, I want to get rows inside of a sheet. So I'm going to click on that. And now over here, it's going to show my Google Sheets account. Sheet within a document is what we're looking for. And now if I click on this drop down for document, I'm going to see that I've got my training sheet there. So when I click on that, you're going to see that. And just to confirm that this is the right one, I can actually click on this little square icon. And it'll take me to it. And yep, that's the correct one. All right. And now the actual sheet inside of there is sheet 1. All right. So there we go. And if I actually just save this here, so now if I click on execute workflow, there we go. It's picked up 3 items. And if I double click, you can actually see it's picked up all 3 rows after the first row. It's really important to know that whenever you're calling a Google Sheet list, it ignores the very first row. Now, of course, you could change that around, but I'm not going to go into that, deeper functionality. However, always remember when you're working with an actual spreadsheet, it'll always start from row 2 and beyond because the column names it assumes is in the first row. All right, so now that I have that data, well, I need to do stuff with each item. Now, I want to actually loop over these items. So if you remember the loop one, we're going to type in tab and we're going to type in loop. And there it is, split in batches or loop. All right. So now, as you can see, I can actually take each item in. However, this is actually a dummy node here that comes every single time with it. So I will just delete this and I will delete this one here for the loop. And now I have to actually add something in. Specifically, the very next step is the AI analysis section. Well, we need to take this information because I've got now the names, I've got the dates of birth. I need to put it into an AI agent so that it can analyze this information and then, of course, get the actual day of the week that the person was born and summarize for us, their horoscope, their day of birth, and, bring together everything in one shot. So that's what we're going to do with the AI analysis section. So here we are. We're going to put in an AI agent node. There it is, AI agent. And let's just connect this up here by clicking and dragging the loop to the AI agent. And now we have to add a chat model. So click that plus button and let's go down to OpenAI. Let me just turn off my camera here so it's easier for you to see. All right, so I'm going to go down to OpenAI. And now I'm going to choose my OpenAI account, choose the one that you set up, and I'm going to choose the model. In my case here, I'm going to choose 3.5 Turbo. All right, you could choose whichever one you want. As I said, I recommend this one because it's the cheapest model. And then from here now, I need to actually define a prompt. So I'm going to double click on the main AI agent node, just like that. And now from here, I'm going to first call the previous data by clicking on execute previous nodes. And then I'm going to change this from connected chat trigger node to define below. All right. Now the next thing is I'm going to click on expression, and I'm going to click on this little square here, which is going to open it up in this view. Now I can actually type my prompt in. All right, so I'm going to type in some context here. So you are a helpful assistant. I'll just type that in correctly. Your task is to create a 1-sentence summary based on the following information. So the name, and we're going to get the actual name from here, which is the person's name. And then we're going to put in their date of birth. All right, and we're going to grab their date of birth. And specifically what we want to do is you want to actually put the format of how it comes in, which is going to be DD, which is the days, MMM, which is the months, and then year, which is how it comes in. All right, so that's how the information comes in. So for example, that's like 13th May 1983. So I'm actually putting in what you're seeing there. Next, your output must follow this exact format. So now I'm giving it constraints here. So summary, and this is going to be the person's name. So we're going to just say name. All right. Was born on, and then we were going to put day of week. So day of week, just like that. And then I'm going to put DDTH. So like, is it the 13th of MMM? Or actually, I'm going to put in like 13th of MMM and comma YYYY. Okay. So I'm putting in like a format I want it to respond in. This makes them a, and now horoscope underscore sign. All right. So I've put that information in. So now some rules for this AI to follow. So important rules. 1, use the correct day of week. All right. For the given date of birth. So it's important that it gets this right, that, it's the correct date. Next, spell out the day. So like, is it Monday? So for example, Monday, Tuesday, etc. All right. The next item that we want to do is we want to, use correct Western zodiac signs. So use the correct Western zodiac signs based on the date of birth. All right. And then finally, you want to output only the final summary, nothing else. So output only, output only the final summary and nothing else. All right. And so for examples, now we're going to do examples. So if you remember when we're doing our prompt engineering, we're trying to put in that whole entire set of steps. So the example now is that if name is Bob Smith and DOB or date of birth is 13th of May 1983, then your output should be summary. All right. Bob Smith was born on Friday, the 13th of May, 1983. This makes them a Taurus. Okay. And that's it. So now, that's the entire thing. And so the hope is that it's going to follow this. It may not always work, but, for the most part, it should. And so we're going to try and run this step here. And here it is, the summary. So we see there, Mark Smith was born on Friday, the 13th of May, 1983. This makes them a Taurus. Okay, so that's using that data. Now, one of the nice things that I could do is I can loop through this here. So if I click on this here and I actually just connect it up to the loop, I'll get to see all the different items. So here we go, 1, 2, 3. If I double click here, now inside of my run, I can actually see all the different runs that it did. So there's number 1, number 2, Sherry Adams was born on Tuesday, the 16th of June, 1992. This makes them a Gemini. All right. Then if I click on number 3, Bobby Duvall was born on Wednesday, the 27th of June, 2016. This makes them an Aquarius. All right. So it's already got that there. So now we're actually at that point where the AI has picked up all of these. All right. So now in our final step, we need to now write this data back into the spreadsheet. All right. So we're going to jump now into that step, and we're going to take the AI output and we're going to write it back in. However, if we're actually going to be using an actual API call, we need to put a wait timer in between so that we don't overload the entire, Google API, especially if you had 100 items or even 1,000 items. Well, now you want to kind of delay it 5 seconds in between so you don't get a 429 error. So let's go ahead and let's just delete this, link here. And let's go ahead now and let's add a wait timer in. There we go. And we're going to let it wait for about 5 seconds. So that's fine. And now we're going to actually call it the Sheets again. So we're going to call Google Sheets. But this time we're going to append or update a row in the sheet. Now, it's important to understand we're not just adding a row to the bottom, we are updating rows. And that's where that unique key came in, because we're going to have to go back to the actual unique key and use that so that it can recognize where to update the row. So we're using append or update row in sheet. So go ahead and click on that. And if I click on the execute previous data, it's going to get all the information we need. But you notice I don't have the other data. That's because it's in another area, which is loop over items. So if I go to number 1 here, you're going to see the data. That's the ID I need. So let's go ahead and select our document, which is going to be training sheet. Next, we're going to basically choose the sheet 1. Now it says map each column manually, and the column to match on, that's the ID. All right. So it's going to be searching that ID first to figure out where it needs to actually put this data to update. So specifically, we're going to click and drag the ID from a previous node, just like that, and throw it inside of here. There we go. Now for the name, well, we don't need to worry about that. For the date of birth, we don't need to worry about that. What we want is the summary that comes from the output of the AI agent. And in this case, it's this here. So we're going to click and drag it in. That's the output when we go to the AI agent node. And now, once that's done, we're going to click on the end here and we're going to loop this all around. So now let's click on clear execution. And now we're going to execute the workflow, and we're going to take a look at our training data, which right now doesn't have anything inside of there. But when I hit execute workflow now, all right, so the loop is done. And when we go back to our training data, there it is, all the summaries. They're all right inside of the sheet. So that was a great little project that you just completed, and you learned about data handling, reading from and writing to spreadsheets. You learned how to use unique keys. You learned about AI usage using ChatGPT and even rate limiting with wait nodes. You also learned some of the AI automation basics. And this is going to help all of you prepare as students for real world automation requests. This is the real stuff that people are going to ask you for. And it's also going to help you as students to expand even more, especially when you're working with businesses and real world use cases. All right, it's time for our quiz on spreadsheets and data processing. Number 1, why do we use a unique key inside our spreadsheets? Is it so that we can open a door? Is it to ensure accurate data mapping when writing results back? Or is it that keys are easier than data storage units? If you said to ensure accurate data mapping when writing results back, you're right. Number 2, what does the wait node do? Does it prevent rate limiting issues? Or is it used as a filler node when we want to end things? If you said it prevents rate limiting issues, you're right. Number 3, what node do we use to iterate through data? Is it the aggregator node? Or is it the loop over items node? If you said the loop over items node, you're right. Number 4, what is the JavaScript that we use for the name? Is it json.dob or is it json.name? If you said json.name, you are right. Congratulations. All right. So now to really solidify your learning, we are now going to be diving into the n8n community courses. These are going to give you official recognition for your skills. And what we're going to be doing in this course is we're integrating those community programs in. When you complete these, you're going to be getting official badges on your actual community profile, and you can use that to, kind of show that you actually know your stuff. All right. Now we're going to be going over the first course and the second course. However, I'm going to be changing some of the data around and some of the things that are going to be shown. The reason is I still want you to actually do these exercises. I don't just want to provide you all the answers and then everyone goes and gets badges and now it's kind of useless because you actually don't know the skills. Our goal here is for you to actually learn. So even though I'm going to show you some of the same types of patterns, the data is going to be changed or the patterns are going to be tweaked slightly just so that you kind of get the idea of what's going on, but not so much that you can actually go and submit that and actually get an actual badge. All right. So keep that in mind. The goal is you still need to do the work, and this is here to help you so that you're following it along, but not to actually replace the exact same data. So basically, I'm not giving you the actual final exam, if that makes sense. So the level 1 course, we're going to be walking through it. It's the official n8n level 1 course. And this module, it guides you through the entire community course, ensuring that you get a deep understanding of the fundamental concepts. The key focus areas are building foundational skills in n8n, all right? And then a modified approach, as I said, we're going to change some of the things together so that you get the idea of what we're doing, but without getting the final results so that you can actually go through it yourself and, pass and get the badge. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the course. We're going to modify the data. We're going to have you complete it independently. After I've done this, follow along, but then complete it on your end. And then you're going to submit for a badge. You're going to be going to docs.n8n.io/courses/level-1. So when we click on that, you're going to see this here. It's right inside the docs. And if you want to start from docs here, you can actually go like this here, right inside of docs. And on the left side, you're going to see text courses. Click on that and click on level 1. So the first thing that you want to do is set up an n8n account. Well, we already did that. If you follow along, you either set up the n8n Cloud or a VPS version or a self-hosted version. The next thing is that we need to get a course user ID. So you're going to click on the sign up here button here, and now you're going to follow the n8n form. So click on sign up, and now let's start off with the name, Solomon Christ Training. All right, so that people know that this is the training one. All right, and now which email address? I'm going to use my other one. So Solomon ChristUSA@gmail.com. There we go. Please provide your n8n forum username. So chances are you don't have one yet, but if you followed along, you probably already have one. So I'm going to create a new one here just so you can see the process. So I'm going to click over here on this link here, and it's going to take me to the community. And let's go ahead and click on sign up. So Solomon Christ Train, so that I'm here for the training example here. And now I'm going to type in a password that I want. I'll do it again. Okay, once you enter in all your information, go ahead and click on sign up. And you're going to get this email here to confirm your community account. So go ahead and click on it. And now you're part of the n8n community. So go ahead and click on activate your account. Congratulations, you're in. So let's click on finish. And now at the top right, you're going to see here, this is where we're going to get our information. So you click on the actual icon for your name, click on the little icon that looks like a person, which is your profile. And then let's click on summary. And right here, this is your username. And that's what you're going to put inside of the type form. So let's go back now and let's paste our username inside of there. So this is Solomon Christ Train for training. So I'm going to hit OK. And which of these areas do you mainly work in? So here we go. I am now in, let's see here, IT engineering, sales, automation consulting. Let's just put that in there because that's what I do. How are your coding skills? I am a pro coder, right? If you are, then put that in, no problem. What is your first thing you want to build with n8n? Education. I'm teaching you guys. All right, there we go. I'm going to hit submit. All right, so there we go. So now automatically that went through their own n8n automation and it should instantly send an email to us. So I'm going to take a look at my email and here we go. This is all my information that I'm going to need for n8n course level 1. So make sure you check your email, check your spam, because you're going to get these important unique IDs. Now, of course, I've blurred these things out here, but you're going to get a unique ID, a webhook URL, a dataset URL, a header auth name, and a header auth value. These are going to be required when you're actually doing everything that you need for the entire level 1 training. Now, if you remember earlier in our course, we needed you to get onto the Discord server. So if you've not already done so, please make sure you join the Discord server by clicking on it, because it is required for the course. So we have to choose a display name. All right. So make sure you choose a display name and then create an account if you don't already have one. And at any time, if you do get stuck and you need some help, you can always reach out to the community forum via the community forum link. And you just go to community.n8n.io and you can just ask all your questions there. But we're going to follow along here, and hopefully this is going to reduce the amount of trouble that you guys have. All right. So now we've got our user setup. We've got the course user ID information. We've got the basic knowledge now of JavaScript and APIs. And we've got an account on the n8n community forum. So you've done all of that now. So let's dive in, and it's going to take a little while. Now they're estimating about 2 hours, but with this video, it'll be a little bit faster. All right. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be building the main workflows, and then you have to pass the quiz. All right. Now this is the important part, but in order to pass a quiz, well, you got to build. All right. So that's why you have to actually go through this, and we're going to do this together. So now let's click on, let's get started. So inside of this first lesson, we're going to go through the UI, and we already did that. It's going over the basics for editor UI settings, the left panel, all this information. So you already know this from our earlier stuff, but you can read through this as well. That's what I want you to do, is go and read over everything. There's a lot of stuff inside of this, and you now have additional stuff here. All right, control left button and so on. It kind of shows you what's going on, all about the nodes. So now we're going to move on to the next item. So on the left side here, click on building a mini workflow. So it wants us to add a manual trigger node, and then we're going to add in the Hacker News node. All right, so let's go ahead and let's create a brand new n8n automation here. So I'm going to start off with a simple trigger here. And then from here, I'm going to hit tab and I'm going to type in Hacker News, just like that. Okay, and I want to get many items, just like that. And specifically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to limit this to 5. And I'm going to add a field here for a keyword. And I'm going to type in artificial intelligence. And then when I click on execute node, or the step, I've now got 5 items back with the latest information on AI. All right, and a whole bunch of details and all kinds of great stuff. I can even execute the workflow from here as well. And so now, this is working. So now we're going to move on to the next step once you're done. So when you actually follow this along, it's going to ask you for different data to input. And so you'll be able to do that, but you kind of got to see how that works. So now let's go into automating a real world use case. And you're going to meet Nathan, and he's an analytics manager at AB Corp. All right. So his job is to support the AB Corp team with reporting and analytics. And so we're going to be understanding the scenario. You're going to meet Nathan. You're going to say hello. And you're going to say, hey, what's a repetitive task that we want? And Nathan is going to say, hey, you know what? One of the most annoying things is weekly sales reporting. I don't like it. It's so challenging. And so he has to collect a whole bunch of sales data from their legacy warehouse data system, and it sucks. And so he needs to, kind of get it together, because each sales order can have like the status as processing or booked, and he has to calculate the sum of all the booked orders. All right. So that sounds like a great opportunity to create an automation. So now what we want to do is we want to break the problem down, right? So take the problem and break it down. So what are some of the things that we can do to help this person out? Then we will actually lay it out in n8n. So in this case here, it says the data warehouse was written a long time ago, okay? The actual information, the app, it doesn't have a CSV export. So there's no CSVs that are coming out, but they recently added a couple of API endpoints where we can get the data. And so that is great, because now guess what? When I'm just thinking out loud, well, maybe I can use an HTTP node to actually grab this information. All right, so I'm thinking about the problem itself. So now we can actually jump into n8n once we actually kind of get an idea, and we can kind of think about how we're going to lay this out. All right, so basically, we're going to send the data from the company's data warehouse to 2 external services. That's what it is, Discord and Airtable. All right, so here's the thinking process, right, where we're breaking the problem down. Get the relevant data, all right, order ID, order status, order value, employee name, filter the orders by their status, so processing or booked, calculate the total value of all the booked orders, and notify the team members about the booked orders in the company's Discord channel. Then we're going to insert the details about the processing of the orders in the Airtable to follow up. And then we're going to schedule the workflow to run every Monday morning. So we need to start off with an HTTP request. So here we go. And we're going to start with a brand new workflow here. I'm just going to call this training 1. All right. So let's go ahead. And before we start off with the schedule, like I said, we're going to start off with a manual. So we're just going to do a manual trigger. And then from here now, we're going to add in an HTTP request. Okay, just like that. There we go. Now we need to know the endpoint. We need our API key. So we go to the email that we got. We're going to grab our dataset URL. So there you go. The dataset URL, we're going to grab that. And if I actually go inside of here and I put that inside of, my HTTP request. So I added the dataset URL. I put this to get. So get is there. Well, now I have to send some headers. So specifically, which headers do I need to send? Well, let's click on actually specifying headers. So send headers. So for our name, we're going to type in unique ID. So we're just going to say unique _ID. And then for the value, we're going to actually go back into our email and we're going to grab the unique ID that they sent us. We're going to copy that and paste it back in. And now let's test this again. Well, it's still not working. And we're wondering, well, why is it not working? Well, that's because we forgot another important step, and that's your authentication. So in this case here, we're going to do a generic credential type. And over here where it says generic auth type, we're going to select header auth. And now we're going to create a new credential. And so inside of name and value, we're going to put in the information that was sent to us. So over here, we take the header auth name, which is in this case API _ key. And we're going to take the header auth value, which is like a password or something like that. So we're going to take that data, paste it, hit save, and now we have the correct information. So now when I click on execute step, now I get all the data. So wonderful. Now we've got 30 items here. So now what? So in this case, we're going to be using an Airtable account. Now chances are you don't have one already. So inside of the tutorial, it says create an Airtable account. So go ahead and click on that. And now we're going to sign up to Airtable. So we're going to go to the top right here and just hit the X. Create a blank app and just click on create. All right, so now it's saying we've got an untitled base. And so now let's go back to our tutorial. So in any new table, it's usually going to have these 4 columns here: name, notes, assignee, and status. But we're going to rename the table into orders. So even though I put training, let's rename it into orders. And we're going to delete the 3 blank records by default. All right, so let's go ahead and let's call this orders. So let's go here, change this to orders. And then you could just right click on any of these and you could just click on delete record. So we're going to just right click and delete, right click and delete, right click and delete. So we've deleted all of that. So that's all deleted there. And I'll just close this side off here so I can close Omni so we could see this a lot easier. And so now let's delete also these items here. So the notes, we don't need this data field here. We don't need the assignee one. We don't need the status one. We don't need the attachments one. And that's fine. So I can just delete both of these here. Delete that one, delete that one. So now I'm going to rename this thing to order ID. And I'm going to make this into a number field, just like that. And I'm going to hit save. And I'm going to follow along and I'm going to actually create these items here. So customer ID, which is number, employee name, which is a single line text, order price, which is a number, and order status, which is a single line text. So go ahead and do that and we'll come back together. So now we're all set up. So now when we go back into our n8n, we're going to be adding the Airtable node. So let's go ahead and hit tab and type in Airtable. There we go. And we're going to select the create a record action. And so now we have to create a new credential. So you're going to do that by clicking on the drop down here and click on create new credential. And we need an access token. So to do that, we have to actually open up the access token page on Airtable. So if you want, you can click on Open Docs here. And you can click on this link here, which says go to the Airtable Builder Hub with the personal access tokens. So when I click on that, I end up coming here. And so I'm actually going to go ahead and click on Create Token. And over here, I'm just going to call this n8n Training. And then I'm going to add in the recommended scopes. So data.records read, data.records write, and schema.bases read. So let's go ahead and do that now. So here we go, add a scope, data.records read, add another scope, data.records write, and then schema.bases read. So now when it comes to access, make sure that your token can access all resources. And we can even add a specific base. So in this case here, I can add in orders, but you could choose, whatever you want. but make sure that you access all resources. And then I'm going to select create token. And let's go ahead and paste that back inside of our n8n and hit save. There we go, we're connected. All right, so now at this point here, if you actually click on the base drop-down list here, you're going to see the orders base. And from there, the table is going to be table 1. All right, so now that we have that there, what we're going to do next is instead of mapping each column manually, we're going to select to map automatically. So it will automatically, put them inside of that list. Let's go ahead and save that now. And if I double click on my Airtable node and I click on execute step, I should then see inside of my actual base and Airtable all 30 of the actual items inside of there. So watch this, click on execute step, and there it is. And so now if we actually go inside of our table, there it is, table 1, and you see all of the information here, all 30 items are inside of there. All right, so now we're going to be working on filtering orders. Basically, if you remember earlier inside of our training, we looked at different logic operators. One of them was if. And the if node we're going to be using right now to go through all the order statuses, because we need to find a certain order status and then only return those specific rows that match that order status. So that's what we're going to do. So the first step is we're going to delete this here. We're going to move this over. We're going to tab and we're going to add an if. There we go, just like that. And basically we're going to now move this around here. So remember, we're using the delete command a lot from these lines here. And so if I connect something, I can, just hover over it and hit the delete button if I want to disconnect it. So very, very easy to use. And specifically here, what we want to do is we're looking at our order status. All right. So what we're going to be looking for here is we're going to be looking for a type of order status. Now, I am going to be going for the booked ones. So I'm just typing in booked just like that. And now if I hit execute step, you're going to see that I get 16 back here that say booked. Now, you're probably wondering, well, that's not what the exercise said. That's exactly my point. I'm not here to do exactly what the exercise said. I'm here to tell you the basics, and then you go out there and do the exact exercise, so then you get all the stuff that you need to answer the questions, which is going to go into the n8n team to actually pass and get your badge. So now the next thing that we have to do for Nathan is he needs to only process a certain type of order type. We're going to be looking at the booked ones, okay? And so what we need to do now is we need to actually throw this back into Airtable. So basically what we're going to do now is we're going to retest the Airtable node, all right, based on what it says. And before we actually do this to actually add stuff in, we're going to have to delete everything that's in Airtable right now. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to select everything. I'm going to right click anywhere here. And then I'm going to click on delete all selected rows. Now it's important to note that if you right click up here somewhere, it's not going to work. So right click on any row as you've got everything selected. And now it'll actually come up with delete all selected rows. All right. So this is specifically for Airtable. So I'm going to do that there, and it says delete records. I'm going to hit delete. There we go. So now we're ready for the next step. So basically whatever it finds, in this case here, 16 items of booked orders, we're going to throw it into Airtable here. Now, an interesting, fun little tidbit here is, as you can see, I got this thing like all over the place, right? Kind of looks weird. So I'm going to right click on here and I'm going to click on tidy up workflow. If you've never seen that before, that is something really cool. So just click on that. And as you can see, it makes it all nice and neat. It's a nice little trick, and you'll really enjoy that, but it straightens everything out. So I can even right click on just like a few items. So like if I actually, hit this and then I hit this with control. So I'm using the control key on my keyboard, and then I'm just going to tidy up these two by hitting right click here and tidy up selection. And it can tidy up, a certain part of your entire flow as well. So nice little trick to know as you're actually, doing a lot of workflows over time. So now if I execute this workflow, as you can see here, it's going to do all 16 items now into the Airtable, which are going to be booked orders. So let's go take a look. And there we go. So the order status here is booked. All right. So good job. Now we're on to our next step. So Nathan says, this if node is so useful for filtering data. Now I have all the information about processing orders. I actually only need the employee name and order ID, but I guess I could keep all the other fields just in case. I would say, if I'm the service provider, actually, I wouldn't recommend doing that. Inserting more data requires more computational power. The data transfer is slower and takes longer and takes up more storage resources in your table. In this particular case, we've got 16 records with several fields. It might not seem like, it make a significant difference, but if your business grows and you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of records, well, then this will add up. It's going to cost you more. It's going to be more time. It's going to be more of a challenge. And so Nathan is like, oh, that's good to know. So can you select only 2 fields from the processing orders? So there's the little interaction with the client and customer. And this is great because the n8n team has really thought through an actual client situation. And so that's what we're going through right now. All right. So now to actually, get a specific, set of data. Well, if you remember from our past training so far, we've got something called the set node. So we're going to, hit tab and we're going to type in set here or edit fields. And what we're going to do now, and, usually it'll connect to whatever you had last. So I'm going to disconnect from here. And what we're going to do now is all the data that's coming in. Well, we want to now just get, 2 specific areas. Now, specifically, we already know if an order status is booked, we're going to be getting that information. But now I want to get the employee name. All right. And we've got that. And I'm going to get something else. In this case here, I'm going to get the order price, specifically because maybe I want to know all the order prices that these employees did. How much money did they actually make for the company? All right. So there we go. So now I've got these 2 items here that I want to get the data for. And specifically, I'm going to be putting it into Airtable, but I need a new table to work with. So I'm going to go ahead back into Airtable here, and I'm going to create a brand new table by clicking on the Add or Import button. And we're going to create a table starting from scratch. And we're going to call this here Processing Orders, just like that. All right, so we just want to kind of see what's going on. So now I've got a Processing Orders table. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of columns. I want to just have 2 specific columns that I'm going to be working with. So first, we're going to delete all these other ones. So I can actually hit Control on my keyboard and I can select multiple columns. Then I could right click anywhere and I could click on Delete 5 fields. And that'll delete these 5 columns here. All right. Now, specifically, I'm going to be keeping name, but I'm going to call it something else. If we go back into our edit fields here, we've got employee name and order price. So we're going to keep it the exact same format. So over here, employee name, I'm going to copy that and I'm going to come back here. If I double click on this, I can actually edit field, or I can double click and I'll see that. And I'm going to hit save. And then I'm going to add now a value here, which is a number value, which is going to be how much they made. So we're looking for order price here. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to be pasting that in. It's a number type. And I'm going to click on create field. So I only have 2 items here, which reduces the amount of data that I'm going to have to process. So on a few rows, it's fine. But when we get into like 10,000 or 100,000 rows or something, really big, you're going to start seeing it's going to be completely slowing down to a crawl. That's why we want to be very conscious of, what kind of data we're actually bringing in. All right. And how we're structuring that data. So keep it simple, and that'll really, save you on time and money and, overall the calls that are being sent out to Airtable itself or any other API, whether it's Google Sheets and so on and so forth. All right, so we're going to open up Airtable here, and our base is orders, but this time our table is going to change to processing orders, which is a different one. Now we've got map automatically there because we've got the exact same field names or the headers for the columns. So now I'm going to hit save, and we're going to click on execute workflow here. Now you notice that, all of these are kind of like lit up and there's data that's coming through here. Well, remember the whole pinning? We're going to try some pinning right now. So I'm going to take this here and I'm going to pin this data. If you don't have enough screen space over here, you'll see this. Pinning is at the top right here. So I'm going to click on pin this data here. So now I don't have to make that call again. All right. So that's going to save me, an API call. Now, of course, at the same time, if I want updated data, that's a different story. So you want to remove pins if you need updated data. But in this case here, I'm just showing you with a pin what to do. And I'm going to turn off my camera just for a moment here. because at the bottom right, I'm going to be clicking on a button here called Clear Execution. And it's important that you know that this exists, because what's happening right now is there's data, and this kind of looks like, oh my goodness, what's going on? Did it run? There's an error. What's going on? So we want to clear this execution so that it's like starting from fresh again. All right. So when I click on Execute Workflow, it's going to run everything, but you notice how it just skipped right over this because it already has the data. So I don't have to worry about getting this data again, but it still runs everything else with the same data that this thing pulled. All right, so that's what the pin can do. Okay, so if we actually did this correctly, it's now going to have inside of my table all of their names of the salespeople and how much money they closed for each order. And that should show up in the Airtable. So here we go. And yep, we could see that. All right. Now you're noticing that, oh my goodness, there's 3 rows. That's because we forgot to delete those rows when we first started the table. So I'm going to select all again. We'll do that again. And I'm going to right click on any of the rows. Okay, I can't right click up here. So I'm going to right click down here, and I'm going to click on delete all selected processes. And this is good exercising because it's working out your muscles. Just like a gym, you're working out your technical muscles. All right, here we go. And so now what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and we're going to now unpin this. And I'm going to show you another way to pin and unpin. So if I select this actual node, if I hit the letter P on the keyboard, I can unpin it. Now it has to fetch live data. All right, so I'm going to clear the execution list here. So at the bottom here, clear the execution. And I'm going to now execute workflow, just like that. There we go. So in this next step, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be calculating the processed orders. So as you could see here, we've got our setup here on the top, top side of it. As you can see here, pretty much the same. But now we've got the bottom side coming in. But as I said, we're flipping things around. So we're going to be calculating the processing orders. All right. So we're doing that on purpose because, once again, we want you to actually do this exercise. All right. So you're going to get an idea of what to do, but now it's going to be, like I said, different values, different data. And that's the whole point, is when you could think through like an, automation professional, you're going to get much better at this. All right. So we want to figure out the total value of all processing orders. All right. So there is something called the code node that we're going to throw in here. All right. And we're going to basically hit tab. We're going to type in the code. And if you remember earlier when I showed you the code node, there's a lot of stuff that it could do. And we're going to now connect this up here. And we're going to get all of the orders that say that they are in processing. We're going to be taking this piece of code here. So if you go down into the actual, document there, you're going to take the entire thing, and I can, highlight it and copy it, or I could click on this little copy button, same thing. And I'm going to paste this right inside the code. Okay, so I'm going to go inside of here, Control A, and then Control V. And there we go. I pasted that. As you can see here, and I'm just going to expand this out using this little icon here. As you can see, it's coming out as JSON. Now it says here, items, input all, total booked. Well, we're actually going to be changing this because it's not total booked, it's total processing. It's going to take all the items that come in, and this is book sum. We're going to change this to, processing sum, and then we're going to rename all of these variable portions here. Processing sum is equal to processing sum plus the actual order price. So now I'm going to go over here to book sum and change it to processing sum, and total booked is actually total processing. So copy that and total processing. All right, so now we should have this here. And if I execute this step, well, it says that there are 14 items that are total processing, and our processing sum is 1,393.61. All right, so that's how much is actually in the processing section. That's how many orders are actually in the processing mode, and that's what I've got available. All right, so our next step is, now that we have that, and you can see the power of the code node, we're going to move on to the next step. So our story continues, and Nathan says, wow, the code node is so powerful. That means I can have some basic JavaScript skills, and I can power up my workflows. And then, yeah, you can progress from no code to low code. And then Nathan says, well, how do I send my calculations for processing orders to my team's Discord channel? All right, well, there's an n8n node for that. So we're going to go over to that n8n node. So notifying the team. This is where, if you remember earlier in this entire, program, we had you set up Discord with the n8n Discord server. Okay, so we're going to be actually now sending messages to that server. It's important because this is how you earn your badges. Okay, so we're going to walk you through that. And you need to be able to access the course level 1 channel inside of Discord. So over here it says n8n server. So go ahead and click on that, and it's going to take you to the n8n Discord page. And you should be able to see all of this, and specifically at the bottom, you're going to see something called course level 1. And so we're going to be sending messages, and you've got a unique ID that was sent to you. So we're going to be using both of these in our actual training. So course level 1 and course level 2. All right, so now we're going to set up our Discord node. So we're going to hit tab, and we're going to type in Discord, and we're going to go to message actions, and then we're going to click on send a message, just like that. All right, and so now inside of the connection type, we're going to select webhook, and then from here, you're going to go down and click on create new credential, and you would have gotten a webhook URL in your email. So let's go back into our email, and you're going to see here a webhook URL. So we're going to just take that webhook URL, and it's blurred out here in my video, but for you, you're going to see this in your email. And I'm going to copy that, and we're going to paste that into the webhook URL here. And then we're going to hit save. And if we did everything correctly, well, we should be good to go there. All right, so now we're going to copy this here to the clipboard. Okay, this entire message, this week we've, and then total booked. In this case here, I'm going to click here. And as you notice, our Discord is not actually connected up. So let's first connect that up. So click on back to Canvas here, and let's connect it up from our code node to our Discord node. And we're going to double click on Discord node again. And so now we're going to change this message from fixed to expression. So go ahead and click on expression. And now you're going to see this little icon again, the little square icon. Click on that. And we're going to paste the message that we just got from the actual, docs here inside of our training. So what we're going to do now is we're going to retype this out a little bit differently here. So you would have copied and pasted this message here, but specifically we're changing the data here. So this week we've total processing, which is 14. Okay, we've got 14 book orders with a total value of processing sum. So in this case here, we got the processing sum and my unique ID. So I'll just hit execute step here, and it says your message has been sent. And if I actually go here, all right, and as you could see, we sent the information, and here it is. All right, now I've covered up all the other answers so that you don't actually know the exact answers. So you're going to have to do that on your own. But now you have an idea. We've now sent it to the Discord server. So good job. So Nathan says, incredible. You've saved me hours of tedious work already. Now I can execute this workflow when I need it. I just need to remember to run it every Monday morning at 9 a.m. And then, boom, you say, hey, you know what? We can actually do a schedule node. So this is where a schedule trigger comes in. All right, so remember the schedule trigger. We talked about that in an earlier part of the actual training. So now we're going to be replacing this first node from a manual node to a schedule trigger node. So to do that, all we have to do is just delete this here, this link, just like that. And we can move this down here. And I can hit tab and type in schedule. And there's our schedule trigger. I just click, drag, and then connect it up. And now I could actually just set this up for exactly what Nathan wanted. So what we're going to do is we're going to select weeks here. All right. And we get to choose what days of the week. So I'm going to choose here. I mean, you could choose several days. He wanted Monday. We're going to choose Wednesday. All right. And then we're going to set it up for noon. And then the trigger at minute, we're going to keep it at 0. So if I actually now set this up here and connect it up like I did and I hit save, well, this is great. It's set. However, it's not fully running because this has to be set to active. Keep that in mind when you're using a schedule trigger. All right, so now let's come back to the story here. So now you basically tell the client, say, yep, that's it. That was the workflow. I've added and configured all the necessary nodes. Now, every time you click on execute workflow, the n8n system will execute all the nodes, getting, filtering, and calculating and transferring the sales data. And so now Nathan says, this is what I needed. My workflow will run automatically every Monday morning, well, every Wednesday in this case at 9 a.m. All right. And it's like, oh, wait, not so fast. To that, you need to activate your workflow. As I said, you have to activate it. All right, I'll do this in the next step. All right, so here we go. Activating and examining the workflow. So in this step of the workflow, you're going to learn how to activate your workflow and change the default workflow settings. So once we hit the active button, you're going to see here it says workflow activated. Your schedule trigger will now trigger executions on the schedule you have defined. These executions will not show up immediately in the editor, but you can still see them in the execution list if you choose to save executions. All right, so you can hit got it and we're good to go. Now, specifically, let's say you've got a whole bunch of customers and clients and each one is in a different time zone. And well, oh my goodness, I got to actually calculate this. There is a simpler way. And so now if I click on the three dots here, I can actually go into a settings for this specific workflow. So when you bring up the settings, you can actually change the time zone from the default time zone, where in this case, I'm PST, Los Angeles. You could change it to anything, right? So you could actually choose, let's say America, Chicago, or there's other places around the world, depending on where your customer is. And then the workflow will actually be set to that time zone. It's really important because, well, they may be in a different time zone and this workflow will actually then start firing off at, your PST time zone if that's what you've set up. So really important tip that if you want to set up your workflow for a different time zone, you could do that inside of your settings. All right, so now you've done all this hard work and you don't want to lose it. So if you want to save this workflow, there's a few ways that you can actually do that. Specifically up here, if I click on the three dots, you're going to see here that I can now download this workflow here. So three dots, download workflow, and boom, there it is. It's my JSON. Now, another way that more advanced n8n users will actually, back up all of their workflows is they will actually create a workflow that does backups. And to do that, you need to actually have an n8n API key to access n8n's own built-in node here. So if I actually just type in n8n, I can actually click on that and I can actually get everything going on from my specific version here of n8n. So my specific implementation of n8n here, I can access all kinds of different things. So over here, for example, I can get many workflows, which means that, I can get everything that I need to. But if you don't know where your n8n API account is, well, you're going to click on create new credential and you're going to say, well, I need an API key. Where do I get that? Well, let me show you how to do that. If you go to the bottom left and you click on the three dots beside your name, you click on settings, you go to the n8n API, and then you're going to be able to create an API key. That's the key that you're going to actually put in to actually be able to access everything inside of your n8n, such as getting many of your workflows. From there, you could actually set up an entire workflow to create your very own backup system. So now if you want to get the solution for that, I've got an entire video on how to set that up in 10 minutes so that you can actually have all your workflows backing up to your Google Drive. All right. So if you've done everything up until this point, you're going to get a quiz here. Now you need to score at least an 80% to get, the actual pass mark. And when you do that, you're going to get a badge. Now you're going to have to actually go through this entire process again, but now you're going to have to do the correct values and all the correct information. But you're going to click on take the quiz. And if I click on that, it's going to be another type form, which is once again, it's their own n8n workflow. So it's usually done instantaneously. So once you pass it, you'll know immediately. And the nice thing is there is no limit on, answering the quiz questions. So no time limit. All right. But once you've done that, and if everything went successfully, you're going to get a badge inside of your, n8n account inside of your community profile. Over here inside of badges, you'll see completed n8n course level 1. All right. So that's something that, you can actually show on your actual account there. All right. So it's really, really powerful. So please go through it and earn your first badge. So congratulations if you made it this far. You've completed already level 1 and you've got your level 1 badge. So now we're going to be going on to level 2. So the level 2 community course goes over even more complex and intermediate problems. And so we're going to go through a lot of them. And once again, the whole goal here is to kind of understand what's going on. You're going to get a new set of IDs and information emailed to you, and you're going to have to follow along. So let's go ahead and let's click on this link and let's get started. It's at docs.n8n.io/courses/level-2. So let's go ahead and click on that. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get a new user ID. So we have to click on the sign up here button for course 2. So go ahead and click on that and let's follow the sign up process. So click on sign up. You're going to enter your name. So Solomon Christ Training. All right. And you're going to put in your email, solomonchrisusa@gmail.com. And once again, inside of the community forum, if you click on your name, you click on your icon here and you click on summary, you're going to come to this page here where you will get your username here for the community section. All right. So you're going to copy that and you're going to paste that in here where it says, please provide your n8n community forum username. You're going to paste that in, hit OK. And then which of these areas do you mainly work in? We'll go ahead and put down, where you work and how are your coding skills. You can put in whatever your coding skills are. Let's say I'll just say 0. Okay. Of course, it's not 0. What is the first thing you want to build with n8n? Well, right now I'm just training. So there we go. And I'm going to hit submit. And we're all set. So now it's going to send me a second email and we're going to have all of our information that we need to continue in the course. All right, so if you actually signed up, you should actually get this email here where you're going to get a unique ID, a dataset URL, a Discord URL, header auth name, header value, similar to what you did in the first one here. But now we're going to be doing some new things here in course level 2. So keep that email handy as we continue. All right, so we're going to go over the n8n data structure. So in a basic sense, n8n nodes function as an extract, transform, load, or ETL tool. The nodes allow you to access or extract data from multiple, sources, modify or transform that data in a particular way, and pass or load it along to where it needs to be. So that's what they've called it, is the ETL system or the ETL tool. Now, data moves through n8n in something called an array of objects. An array is a fancy word for a list. It's a list of objects or list of items. Each element is stored in a position or an index inside of that list. Now, if you're in programming, you're going to remember that the very starting of an array is usually 0. Some programming languages will start at 1, and some array types will start at 1. But when you are looking at n8n, it's going to be very similar to what we see in programming, which is it's going to start at 0. So for the example that they gave us here, if you see Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael, well, the 0 point is Leonardo. Data sent from one node to another is sent as an array of JSON objects. And they've got a nice little example there where they show all the objects that are inside of this. These are all called elements. All right, so inside of this entire collection that's called items, there are elements within this entire collection. And an n8n node performs its action on each item of incoming data. And here's an example of how they show how you can return an array of objects for the Ninja Turtles. Here we go, Michelangelo, Donatello, Raphael, and Leonardo. And, this is what it looks like when it comes out as a table. You can do JSON, you can do schema. So there's several different ways that you could see this data. And so our first exercise here is we're going to actually be going to an API endpoint here, which is going to be Poke API. This is going to get all the different Pokemons. All right. And it's going to get some of the data there. Now this data is going to come back and you're going to get a list, and we're going to have to put it inside of a code node as well as a split out node. All right. So these are the two different nodes that we're going to be using. And if I execute this here, you're going to see that I've got all the information here coming in from the API there, both from the code node and from the split out node. And that's what you're going to be doing right now, is you're going to be getting the data from the API and you're going to split it out, or you're going to use a code node to split it out as well. But both of them will give you 20 items, and it's the same data. It's just different ways of actually manipulating that data. Now, there's different types of data that we can manipulate, HTML and XML data. All right. And so they've given you a website that you can actually grab some information here. So we're going to be taking this website and we're going to get the latest blog here. And so this is the latest item here, the 7 best AI agent builders. We just want to grab that first item there. So we're actually making a call to that URL. And then from there, we're going to use an HTML system to extract specific data. In this case here, the title, and we're going to be getting the first item that it's going to return here. And so now if I actually, as you can see, if I hit the execute step, it grabs that information and we get that item. Now, if you do this too much, of course, you're going to get rate limited by the website, but it kind of gives you an idea of what you're going to do here is you're actually just grabbing information and you're going to be extracting certain elements from that HTML. For the XML exercise, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going to Poke API, again, the Pokemon one, and you're going to be going from JSON to XML, and then afterwards we're going to extract that XML again so that we actually get that data. So if I actually just run this here, so here this is clear JSON, and we're going from JSON to XML, but this data is how it comes out as. And then from there, we take that same data and we're going to take that XML version of the data and we're going to take it back out to JSON. All right, so now this next part here of the entire tutorial, there is something called a customer data store node. I was actually looking for something called customer data store. I actually thought that that was a database. So when you're actually going through this here, there's an actual node in n8n called customer data store. And it actually has some information. So if I just run this specific node here, it actually goes and grabs some information that it has there. So when we follow this along, we're going to be doing this date exercise here. And specifically, we're going to be getting the date and time of whenever these things were created. And we're going to round it up to the end of the month. And we're going to put out a new field name called new date. And then from there, based on that, if the date is after a certain date, we're going to then wait for a few seconds, specifically 1 second. And then we're going to now have it show up as an edit field in an output value. All right, so here we go. Our if statement is going to check how many are after 1980. We're going to be waiting for 15 seconds here. And as you can see, I changed some of the data there. So when you actually run this, you have to actually follow along what it says there. But over here, it said that all 5 were false. So I'm going to actually put this down a little bit lower here. Let's do 1970. Get a couple of those there. There we go. So one item came in 1970. It's going to wait 15 seconds, and then we should see the edit field. There it is. And as you can see, we got the information there. All right. Next, we're going to be working on binary data. So in this example, we're going to be downloading an actual PDF file, and then we're going to be extracting information from that file. All right. So they give us a URL to do that from and extract from. So I'm just going to click on that there. And when I double click, you're going to see all the information that comes out. So this is how you actually gather data using the HTTP request node. All right, so I only put the basics there so that you understand that this exists, but you have to actually do the work and actually go and do this here. All right, so you're going to be actually adding in a basic HTTP node, and you're going to be getting that file, and then you're going to get an extract from PDF node, which if I hit tab, extract from PDF or extract from file, and then when I click here, it's going to show all the different file types. In this case here, it was extract from PDF. We've got a second exercise right here, and we're going to do that again. I'll just go up here. And this is the second part. Now, what we're doing is we're not only grabbing the PDF file, but we're going to also write it to disk and read it from disk. And this goes on to an extra set of steps here, where we are writing the actual file to the hard drive or local drive. If it's on a VPS, it's the Docker system. All right, and then we're going to read that exact same file to actually see what we got. So let's go ahead and run this. And there it is. This is the actual information here. And I can actually view and download this same file here. All right, so that's what you're going to do. These are the different nodes. And if I hit tab, you can do read and write files from disk. And you're basically duplicating this. You're doing this twice. All right, back to back. One to write files, one to read files. All right, so the next set of stuff is all about merging and splitting data. As you can see, you can append, you can combine, you can choose different branches. And so now we're going to do a merging exercise here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start this off, but we're going to be running both nodes here. Now, one of the things that you want to understand when you're running 2 nodes at a time is n8n starts with the top and then goes to the bottom and to the next one. And so it's kind of like reading left to right, top to bottom. All right, so when I run this here, you'll see code go first, the input will go to merge, and then the data will come in and also go to merge. And when both of these come in, that's when merge will complete. So let's go give that a try now. There you go. And you saw that all work out just like that. And as you can see, the merge information came in. The next area is looping and splitting data in batches. All right, so you're going to see that a lot of times. This is the loop method here, and you're going to use this everywhere. I literally use it like in so many workflows. It's such a useful set of nodes. So it's important that you learn how to use this. And we're going to actually use this code here to go over a few URLs. And you could choose different URLs, but for the example here, these are the ones that were given to us. And so you're going to follow along and they're going to give you some information. We're going to grab the RSS feed and we're going to return those back. So let's go ahead and click on execute workflow. There we go. And we exited out with 22 items. So as you can see, if you go to the JSON, you can actually see the content of all 22 items. And so that's really, really powerful there. So whenever we have errors in workflows, we have an error workflow for that. And I showed you some of the nodes, and this exercise goes into more detail and actually has you building out an actual error workflow. So as you can see, we've got a workflow here, and we can actually now call this error workflow anytime from any other workflow. Now, usually what you want to do, something really neat, is you would create one error workflow and you would have it work across all your workflows. And that's simply by setting up that error workflow in every one of your workflows. That's a really great little tip to, really get something set up, such as an ongoing Slack message or an ongoing email to your team to detect when something's going wrong. All right, so keep that in mind whenever you're actually creating out workflows. All right, that brings us to our big use case. All right, let's start off by going back to Nathan and that big example. So once again, it's Nathan, and he says that his manager was so impressed with the first workflow automation that she entrusted him with more responsibility. All right, and then I, as an automation expert, would say, more work and responsibility. Congratulations, I guess. What do you need to do now? And Nathan says, I got access to all our sales data, and I'm now responsible for creating 2 reports, one for regional sales and one for order prices. They're based on data from different sources and come in different formats. Sounds like a lot of manual work, but that's the kind of stuff that can be automated. Let's do it. All right. So now we know what Nathan wants, and we're going to start working on what's actually required here. So we're going to need to get and combine data from all the different sources, sort the data and format the dates, write the binary files, send notifications using email and Discord. So n8n provides core nodes for all of these steps. Okay, so we're going to be creating a workflow that merges the company data with external information. We're going to create another workflow that generates the reports. We're going to create a workflow that monitors errors in the second workflow. All right. Once again, we're going to be using Airtable to actually get the information in. We're going to be using Google to actually access our Gmail, and we're going to be using Discord to actually do the whole webhook and the URL. So if you remember from beginning of this entire course, we set up all of these accounts, except for the Airtable one. We just did that recently. So now in this part of the actual program, I'm not going to be doing too much more other than just kind of guiding you through what they're asking you to do. And the reason is I really want you to go out and do this, especially for level 2. So you're going to have to actually do the work. And to start off, we're going to be creating an Airtable. And you're going to need to put in all this information inside of that Airtable. Specifically, the fields you're going to need are customer ID, customer country, customer email, customer since, region, and subregion. All right, so this is the information that we're going to actually be collecting. Next, they've given you an HTTP request URL that you're going to be putting inside of that node. And that's going to give you some data. And with that data, you're going to basically get this information. Now, make sure that you send the query parameter with fields. All right. After that, you're going to use a merge node to actually get both of these data items in. And once you get those in, you're going to be populating the Airtable with that. And here I have the exact same information. So this is what your final flow should look like. Now, of course, these nodes are all here, but as you follow along inside of the tutorial training here, they're going to be asking you for specific items that they want inside of there. So make sure that you put those things in, and if you did it right, well, all the data should actually show up. Now, at the bottom, it's going to ask you all this information. This is what's going to be on your quiz. So definitely you want to know this information. So to get the answers to this, you have to first set this up, and then you have to run it. Now, I'm not providing you those answers. You need to do the work, okay? But just keep in mind, this is the information that you're going to need when you're going for the quiz. All right, here we are in workflow number 2. In this one, we're going to be generating reports, and they give you the information that you're going to need to create this entire workflow. The first part is actually getting in these 5 nodes here. And so that's the HTTP request, the Airtable, and merge. We've already done that. That was kind of like the first part of that. Now we're actually going to be sorting through this entire thing here. And that's going to be another set of things. So the sort node is going to allow us to sort the data by order price in descending order. After that, we're going to go into the first section where we go into the regional sales. All right, we're going to take the data, we're going to convert it to a file, we're going to set it up for Gmail, and then we're going to send a message on Discord. Now, the webhook URL is the one that you got inside of your email, specifically the Discord URL. All right, so that's what you're going to be using here. Now, another thing that they're going to be requesting you to do is use your unique ID at the end of a message. For this one here, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating a text that says, I sent the file using email with the label ID, and my ID is literally this one here from the email. All right, your unique ID. So keep that in mind. You're going to have to actually create that. All right. So once again, for this part of the course, we're expecting you to actually do this. All right. And it's something that if you follow along thus far, you should be capable of. And finally, the last part is generating the files for total sales. So you're going to see here, there's a loop over items. You're going to be doing an edit fields node, a date and time, convert to file, and then go to Discord. You've already seen this in the previous steps. And it shows you the quiz questions once again over here. All right, so write down the answers to what these questions are. So when you're done, your final workflow should look like this. And you're going to be sending out multiple Discord messages. One specific message from here, and then multiple messages going out from this loop. So that's how you know you did it right. All right, and finally in workflow 3, we're going to be monitoring workflow errors. And so now you're going to connect a Discord node to the error trigger. So that's going to look like this one here. We've got an error trigger to the Discord node. Once again, we're going to be using the Discord URL that was sent to us right here. And then we're going to be using the text here, the workflow with the workflow name, failed with the error message. Then you're going to put in the execution error message, the last node executed, so the name of the last node, and then check this workflow execution here using the execution URL and my unique ID, which you get from the email, which in this case is this one here. Now, if you're wondering where that data comes from, right inside of here, if I run this error trigger, I can actually get a test event. So this is just showing you where the information comes from. I'm not going to put it together for you. That's up to you now to take that next step. And now you're going to be answering all of these questions here. So once you follow through with all of that and you've written down all the answers, you're going to get the opportunity to test your knowledge. At this point, you need an 80% to actually pass this. And when you do, you're going to get a second badge inside of the community badges section here. And as you can see, it says completed n8n course level 2. So earning these badges from the n8n community is one of the key outcomes of this entire training. These badges are going to serve as official validation that, you've got some skills now, all right? And you could share that publicly and show people that, hey, you're part of the community, you're part of the ecosystem, and you know a thing or two about AI and automation. Now remember, badges are awarded upon successful completion of the official n8n community courses. They represent your proficiency level and validate your skills. Congratulations! You've completed the second level of the foundations of AI and automation. You've worked hard and you've achieved some incredible success. You learned how to set up n8n, you learned how to use it, you even learned the basics about it. You learned the splat method, and you learned how to engineer and design various workflows. You completed a core project, and you even did the 2 main foundational courses offered by n8n, earning you 2 badges. The journey doesn't stop here. You're going to keep on learning every single day. You got to keep up to your skills, keep on doing more automations, and of course, keep on helping people. Make sure you take part in the n8n community overall, ask questions, and even answer people's questions. It's going to get you connected to a lot of other AI automators around the world. And explore more resources. Go and check out more YouTube videos. There's more tutorials and insights all around the web. And at the same time, of course, you can subscribe to my own channel on YouTube. You could check out some other incredible creators like Nate Herkelman, who does some incredible stuff with n8n. And there's many others doing some amazing things every single day. And now for the bonus section here. Listen, you've successfully completed level 2 of the AI Foundations program. That was not easy. It took a lot of work. And I want to congratulate you for coming this far. Come and join me in my school community. That's where I'm going to be going over more videos on intermediate and advanced topics like FFmpeg and MySQL. Over there, you're going to see me tackle even more complex real-world challenges that I'm going to share with many of you, and you're going to be able to build on your foundational skills as well. Mastery takes daily dedication, and it's something that I am constantly doing. I'm always a student and I'm always learning. And so if you're like me and you're always wanting to, learn more about AI and automation and some of the latest stuff that's going on in the AI industry, then please come join me, come join the students in my program, and come join the overall larger community of AI and automation professionals who are taking it to the next level. And we're actually, focused on building this as a business, as something that we do daily to actually do in a professional capacity. And if you just want to show your support and you're not able to join my school community, that's okay. Just go ahead and join my YouTube at Solomon Christ AI. I'm always putting out content in AI and automation, and I would love to have you as a subscriber. I'm so grateful that you completed my course. Thank you so much. I always look forward to seeing my students in person, and so I'm sure that one day our paths are going to connect. And so when we do, I look forward to saying hello and seeing your successful journey. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing the amazing things that you are all going to create. Take care, and bye-bye.